Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, where, as always, you're invited to take control of the airwaves and talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160 is the caller line if you'd like to do that. That's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Bonnie.
And I've got good news out there for people. NFT sales seem to be flatlining, thank goodness. There's also an El Salvador update. I'm really happy to see NFTs just go away. Of course, I did an interview with someone today from the college, and during the course of the conversation, NFTs, it had to come up, right? Because he's doing a story about cryptocurrency and all of that stuff. So NFTs, they become integral in the minds of the average person to cryptocurrency at this point. Or NFT is the next big craze, the next big crypto thing for the average person. And
it's really annoying to have to defend NFTs selling for $30 million when they're a picture of rocks. Just anytime you talk about crypto to an normie.
See, well, you don't have to defend it.
No, I don't defend it. I was like, yeah, those are scams. Run away.
I don't either. I just mean like they think you do because they're like, oh, this is crypto. I heard that this is bad.
Well, it is a form of crypto, I guess, but I don't take it seriously, and it's going to be... I like the idea behind NFTs, and I could see a world in which I take them seriously as alternatives to claims of property right or something like that. Like, obviously, if a person owns their home, if they live there, and there are ways to establish who owns a house, and usually that's registering it with the city or something like that. There are ways of doing this in a free market using NFTs, perhaps.
NFT stands for non-fungible token.
Yes, thank you. And using it on registering the copyright or the ownership on the blockchain would mean that no one could just pop into your house and take it from you, which is the whole point of the house registration in the first place. However, that's not at all what NFTs are being used for. It's, as you pointed out, it's being used to sell 6 pixels that people are calling rocks for millions upon millions of dollars, and it's been disgusting the entire time it's been playing out. It's the new ICO, and that was the initial coin offering. Those were popular 3 or 4 years ago. Before I even moved to New Hampshire was when they were really taking off.
Well, the ICO was more akin to like the old .com boom back at the turn of the century, when people were throwing money left and right into the new hot .coms were, and of course most of them went bust. And the same thing was true with the ICO, but at least with the ICOs, you were talking about ideas, right? Everybody that had an ICO had an idea they were pitching, whether it be for some new service or website or, card or whatever it was that they had in mind, whatever technology.
Well, initially they had ideas that they were pitching, but as it evolved, it was just, we have a marketing approach that we want to promote. And it was just... The Bitcoin white paper, it's a technical document, right? It's this is a problem, and here's how we solve the problem. And that's how the first ICO white paper started out too. But as time went on, they began to look more and more like PowerPoint presentations and less like technical documents. So it was more about, we need to put together some fancy presentation in order to raise money and sell this idea. Almost none of which are ever going to come to fruition, because if you dig into these, quote, white papers, you find out that they don't actually have an idea underlying them.
I think that a lot of people just don't understand that a tool is a neutral thing. An NFT is a tool. It's a neutral thing. You can do something bad with it. You can scam someone, maybe. You can money launder with something. But you can also just put a deed to your house on the blockchain, like you said. And people will see that one person did something like money launder by selling a rock for millions of dollars, and this is actually how we earned this money, when it was really drug dealing or something,
That was one of the hypotheses I've heard about the NFTs that I hadn't really thought about, that I think it's probably likely, this is the modern version of fine art.
Yep.
This is what rich people do. They, in order to hide their drug money or to do whatever it is they do with money laundering, they pretend to sell fine art, which is where, Joe Biden's son Hunter paints some horrible painting and then sells it to some Ukrainian company for $50 million. And in reality, it's drug money that went to buy that or whatever. I don't know how it all works.
Something like that, yeah.
The art that was a banana taped to the wall that sold for millions of dollars.
But I don't know if I buy it, because I tend to think people really are just that stupid.
It's probably a combination of both.
Yeah, I think so too. But either way, it doesn't make the use of NFTs evil if somebody does something evil with a tool. It's like
Good point.
A knife isn't evil because someone stabbed someone with a knife when most people use knives to cut their vegetables to cook with.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are saying, and Aria, you're not against the concept of NFT.
She's not, but people I've had conversations with who don't understand crypto use NFTs having a use case that's bad as an argument against even learning about cryptocurrency.
Well, I mean, that's always going to be the case. Even with or without NFTs, there's always the argument that bad people use Bitcoin, drug dealers, terrorists, even though 99% of drug dealers and terrorists are using the US dollar.
Well, yeah, it's super easy to launder US dollars. You just hand it from one person to the other, right?
Yeah.
Or you sell them fine art. Or whatever.
But the problem with the NFT is the craze behind the NFT, and that was what became the problem with the ICO as well, was the craze, where it just became this mindless dump of funds going into various different pitches, many of which were complete scams.
Do you remember useless Ethereum token?
No, but you've mentioned it before. I didn't come across it when it was a thing.
It's my favorite example, and I don't remember the website for it now, but it's literally just useless Ethereum token. It's probably uselesset.com or something along those lines.
That's what it's called?
Yes. It was an Ethereum token that someone created. They said it didn't do anything. It was never going to be useful. It was never going to be tradable on any exchange. They were never going to do anything with it except release it to the people who bought it. And they called it useless Ethereum token. They put all over their website, do not send me your money. No, seriously, this isn't a joke. Don't send me your money. I just created this useless token because I wanted to see what would happen. And what happened was this dude raised millions upon millions of dollars of people buying useless Ethereum tokens from him.
That's kind of like, it's kind of like Doge, except they didn't say not to buy it.
It was very similar to Doge, except Doge is useful as a currency.
You can buy things with it.
Yeah. And I don't know how frequently, stores around Keene or wherever accept Dogecoin. I imagine none of them do. I don't know.
Moosemart might, but I don't know. I haven't been in there in a long time.
I'm not really sure because I don't think anybody's ever tried, but the primary care doctors used to, and they recently stopped.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, they cut way down. They went from a bunch of different options to just Bitcoin and Ethereum. And of course, no one would ever want to pay for anything with Ethereum.
We know no
I don't
Bitcoin
recall.
Cash.
I don't use it. I just have seen you do it, so that's the last time I saw.
Well, for something like that, if I recall correctly, when I spoke to them about it, I ended up using cash because of obvious reasons, but I was curious about their Bitcoin methods, and I wanted to make it clear to them that the fact that they took Bitcoin is why it was there in the first place. Even though I couldn't use Bitcoin, that was why it was there. And they say, yes, we accept Bitcoin, but you have to buy a year's worth of the program at a time, which makes it significantly more worth it because you're just paying, one $720 fee for a full year or whatever the monthly fee was. I don't remember now.
And what was this service?
This was the primary health care that...
Oh, weird. Bonnie's been paying monthly.
Yeah, I didn't know. But
maybe they changed the rules and
you
got grandfathered in or something.
Yeah. At any rate, it made more sense from that perspective to have a 1 year-long Bitcoin payment like Wilder Automotive. If I wanted to get my car repaired and I wasn't restricted from doing so, I would be more willing to use Bitcoin for that sort of payment because that cost is going to be like $600-700. And at that point, a $3 Bitcoin fee isn't that big a deal.
Yeah.
But if I'm buying a $5 burger from Local Burger or something like that, then yes, I don't want to eat that enormous fee.
Do we want to talk about NFTs since we already started?
We might as well.
So the story here from the Wall Street Journal that the NFT market is collapsing, and let it be known, we predicted this
a long time ago.
Free Talk Live because it was clearly a fad. It was just as much of a fad as CryptoKitties was a fad in 2017, which was sort of the first NFT.
That was at least a video game, though.
Was it? I didn't get that far into it.
If I recall correctly, yeah, it had some RPG elements where you could fight one CryptoKitty against another.
I had no idea. Wow.
If I remember correctly.
Okay. Did you actually use them?
No.
Okay.
There are better games to play.
I got the impression they were just collectible items or whatever, these digital collectible items. And that's sort of what NFTs are today?
If you Google search for CryptoKitties, it pops up initially as video game. So maybe there was more of a game aspect to it than I thought.
Maybe you had to feed them or whatever, like a Tamagotchi or whatever. I don't know. But now the NFT thing looks like it might be on a serious decline. We'll tell you more about it coming up.
603-283-6160. If you want to weigh in, did you buy an NFT? Are you watching us value go to zero? Give us a call. Let us know.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. You're invited to take control of the airwaves and talk about whatever is on your mind. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. Again, that's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Bonnie.
And we're talking about NFTs here, and it's been a while since I really perused Bitcoin.com, but the last time I did, they didn't really talk about NFTs. Instead, they just help people learn about cryptocurrency and stay up to date on all the news that's happening in the cryptocurrency world, as well as even buying and selling cryptocurrency. Evidently, they've branched out from Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, and you can now buy Dash, Ethereum, and I think some others over at Bitcoin.com. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you definitely need to go there. Click Getting Started at the top of the page. Just take a few minutes out of your day to learn about this important world-changing information, because people are talking millions of dollars here with this NFT nonsense. And while we would advise you to avoid this NFT nonsense, there are legitimate reasons to get into cryptocurrency. Learn all about them at Bitcoin.com. We have Olivia on the line from Arizona. Olivia, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, guys. So you'll never guess, I dropped into a little radio station, a little tiny local radio station that's not owned by a big corporation, and they need salespeople to sell ads, and I kind of want to get into having my own show, which is $1,500 a month, which I do not have, so I wanted to learn how to sell ads.
Okay.
And I don't know, I know they're going to train me some, but I kind of wanted to find out more from you guys.
They want, I want to make sure I understand this. If you give them $1,500 per month, they will let you have a show there. Is that correct?
Yeah, a 1 hour show 5 days a week. But in order to get that, I would have to sell ads. And so I guess I want sales tips and radio show tips and whatever you got, just throw it at me.
Well, I can tell you, as far as sales stuff goes, Ian may know more as well, but I don't. I would suggest that you email Mark at freetalklive.com.
He's got a lot of years experience of actually being a local salesperson. I mean, the last 15 years of his life, he's been doing Free Talk Live, so that's different than doing local radio sales, right? Like, we have national advertisers. You would have local advertisers there, but I know one of his old tactics back in the day was he would listen to the competition and listen to their advertising. He didn't care about what was on the air. He wanted to listen to the ad breaks and see who was advertising on the competition. And because the idea there is part of one of the hardest things to do when you're selling radio or television or newsprint or whatever it is, whatever kind of media we're talking about, is to get somebody over the hump of being willing to buy any advertising. So if you go...
That's brilliant, man.
See, he's a very good salesman. So if you go to someone who's already buying something else, whether it be a newspaper ad or a radio ad or something like that, and if you go for the other radio advertisers, they're already buying radio, so you don't have to sell them on the idea of radio as an effective mean of communication. Then you're just going in and you're selling rate. You're going to somebody that's already paying too much on a corporate radio station, because you said the station you're talking about is not a corporate station. So they're paying corporate rates, which are going to be top tier, high end rates. And you go in there and say, hey, we've got this local station. It's got this local audience. Probably has a smaller signal. You probably don't want to focus on that. But then, here's our rates. And then you can hopefully do them a much better deal. And then maybe they'll say yes. So that would be my best tip for you, is go after the people who are already advertising. Otherwise, it's just the daily grind of knocking on doors, smiling and dialing. But it's always best to go in and physically see if you can connect with a business owner in real life rather than trying to call on the phone, in my opinion.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I would try Mark, though. Try Mark at freetalklive.com and see if he can give you some other tips.
Thank you so much for the call tonight, Olivia.
And good luck.
Yeah, excellent.
That's tough, by the way. I don't want to make it sound like, it's just going to be easy. No,
well, $1,500 in advertising sales per month, that's steep. Like, even if
no, that's not really that bad. I mean, that's
for a show,
one client.
She has no show at this point, right?
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. I just want to make that clear. I mean, $1,500 is what pays for the show, but then you probably want to, earn enough to buy some food at the end of the week. So you probably should get some more than one client or whatever. But sales is one of the hardest professions in the world. It's not hard as in like you're laying brick and breaking your back like construction or whatever. It's not deadly in that, like logging or roofing. So it's definitely a safer profession. But as far as making it, as far as being a good salesman and being successful at it, it's tough. There's a lot of competition out there.
There's a lot of competition and a lot of misconceptions. And this was one of the things I learned doing IT. I happened to be doing subcontract work for someone who had used to be a salesman. And we talked about this a number of times where, most people have the assumption that a car salesman or whatever kind of salesman, they're going to be kind of shady. They're going to be a little bit dishonest. You have to watch your guard around them. Not usually. Because those salesmen, they tend to get chased out of sales positions by people who are honest and stuff like that. And they end up not being...
If the whole dealership is screwy.
That's true, but in that case, the dealership ends up going under because no one wants to buy from them. No one trusts them. They can't really... In general, a dishonest salesperson, they can't fulfill their contracts. Their clients start getting upset. That salesperson's supervisor gets upset. They reprimand him. Nothing changes, so they fire them. So salespeople, in my experience, based on those conversations, I started looking for it afterwards, they do sort of tend toward honesty.
You have to be risky because you won't have a set amount of money you make every single day.
Yes, this is the benefit of sort of doing your own thing, right, is that you can make as much as you are worth if you're really good at sales. And this is why they say that sales is the best paying profession in the world if you're good at it.
Sure.
If you are not willing to go and make cold calls, and that means show up in front of somebody's eyeballs or pick up the phone and talk to somebody you've never spoken with before, it's a tough job for a lot of people who cannot handle that level of uncertainty. They can't handle the uncertainty of not knowing what they're going to get paid every month. That's why most people just stick with a job working for some corporation because they feel safe, they feel secure. But if you're good at sales and that, and there are skills that you can develop to become good at sales. I'm sure there's a zillion books out there. I don't know which one. That would be another question I would ask Mark is, what book or two books or whatever could you pick up and read to learn some of the skills at sales?
In a more overarching sense, I would suggest that radio sales in particular is not the best. I mean, sales in general is fine long term, but
you got to believe in your product.
Yeah, I'm not sure that radio is going to. My recommendation would be to start a podcast or something like that and begin to build listeners and use Patreon or something like that and use that to raise the money. That way you're using your creative art or whatever.
Going directly to the listener is certainly the smartest way to go. But she sees radio as something viable and may still be in her area. I don't know. It's getting harder and harder, though, as time goes on.
She's an old school type of girl. She likes newspapers.
Oh, that's true. Does. And I don't mean to say it's impossible that radio is going to die or anything like that. I really don't. But if her goal is to create a show and she's just selling advertising in order to pay for that show, then just start a show at that point.
Sure.
And, if you're passionate about that, you're more likely to raise the money doing that than you are going out there and trying to sell advertising to people when you're not passionate about it. But I don't know. I've never been successful at selling advertising, so...
Good luck, Olivia.
Yeah, and definitely email Mark. That's mark@freetalklive.com. What are your thoughts? Would you recommend getting into advertising, radio, podcasting? What steps would you take to get started? 603-283-6160. When we get back, we're going to talk about NFTs.
The death of NFTs.
Long overdue. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odysee, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off. Now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odysee started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odysee. You can watch live or anytime on our Odysee channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odysee today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The US's central bank has raised interest rates by 0.5 percentage point in a bid to get a handle on rising inflation. It's the first time in 22 years that the Federal Reserve has increased rates this much. Fed Chair Jerome Powell has warned that more increases are expected this year.
Inflation is much too high, and we understand the hardship it is causing, and we're moving expeditiously to bring it back down. We have both the tools we need and the resolve that it will take to restore price stability on behalf of American families and businesses. COVID-related lockdowns in China are likely to further exacerbate supply chain disruptions as well. Against the backdrop of the rapidly evolving economic environment, our policy has been adapting, and it will continue to do so. The committee is determined to take the measures necessary to restore price stability. The American economy is very strong and well-positioned to handle tighter monetary policy.
Thousands of people have protested across the United States for a woman's right to choose after a leaked Supreme Court draft showed that justices are getting ready to overturn abortion rights. Chief Justice Roberts said the leak was a betrayal and that the Supreme Court will investigate. US correspondent Caroline Malone reports.
From New York to San Francisco, Boston to Chicago, Atlanta to Houston, there were groups of protests on Tuesday night against a move to repeal abortion rights in the United States. In Seattle, people called for an escalating series of mass action, including possible national strikes if the constitutional right to abortion is removed. Late Monday, US media published a leaked Supreme Court draft document that said the nearly 50-year-old abortion rights law Roe v. Wade was damaging and should be lifted. If that happens, it will be up to individual states to decide on abortion access. Polls show nearly 60% of people in the US support abortion access in most cases, while less than 30% say the law should be overturned. Caroline Malone, Washington.
Police in Los Angeles have arrested a man who attacked comedian Dave Chappelle on stage while holding a replica handgun. The 48-year-old performer was unharmed in the incident. Ira Spitzer has more from California.
Videos from the incident show a man rushing the stage at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles and trying to tackle Dave Chappelle during his performance. Los Angeles police have identified the suspect as 23-year-old Isaiah Lee and say he was armed with a replica handgun containing a knife blade. The suspect was then beaten by security and others and taken to the hospital with apparent injuries while Chappelle continued performing. Numerous other comedians were in attendance, including Chris Rock, who jokingly asked if that was Will Smith, a reference to Smith slapping Rock on stage during this year's Academy Awards.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where you're invited to take control of the airwaves. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to weigh in. Again, that number is 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Bonnie.
And we've been making fun of NFTs here on Free Talk Live for a number of years. I think pretty much since we first heard the concept of NFT and we first explored it, it was like, okay, well, what is this? What is it going to do? What utility does it have? How is it useful? I think just about everyone here on the show has been adamantly against NFTs ever since. I know at one point, roughly a year-ish maybe ago, I wanted to create an NFT. A black pixel and a white pixel. And they were going to be the foundation of all things, right? The on and off switch. And I wanted to sell it as an NFT. Of course, then we realized that
we can't do it because of bail conditions. In the Crypto 6, but man, that could have been a real moneymaker.
Somebody they can title it The Monad.
Well, evidently it's a little bit too late now.
Yeah.
NFT sales are flatlining as I will never be able to say that enough to stop smiling when I hear it. I've hated NFTs. I've hated having to talk about them. And I've hated having to explain to people, no, that's different from cryptocurrency. What we're advocating is not NFTs. Stay away from NFTs, but don't stay away from cryptocurrency. Of course,
I would say be very cautious about NFTs. I'm not going to go as far as you, Arya, and say I'm completely against it because I think there are some applications for it where it makes sense. How many of them there are, I don't know.
Property ownership and stuff, claims and stuff like that. It would be useful for that purpose.
I've seen some interesting pitches on ideas for NFTs. There's, let's see, Kevin Smith and Quentin Tarantino, the filmmakers, are offering special NFT. And forgive me if you're a fan of these guys, and I get this a little bit wrong, but I believe it was Kevin Smith or Quentin Tarantino. One of them made a movie that has not been released. And he's only going to release it to the highest bidder on this NFT and basically transfer the ownership of this film to that person who wins that. And
that's using it for copyright, which I sort of don't object to beyond the fact that it's copyright.
Well, I wouldn't say it's like copyright. It's like saying this is a thing that no one has yet. I have made this thing, and if you're the highest bidder, you will now become the owner of this thing. If you want to open source it...
Yeah, they can decide to let anyone watch it or make people pay to watch it or whatever instead of...
They could keep it forever.
Having to listen to Kevin Spacey.
They could keep it forever and never show it to anyone.
Yeah, but the Wu-Tang Clan did this a few years ago, and they did the exact same thing. It just wasn't an NFT.
What was it?
They just had an unreleased album. That Martin Shkreli guy, Farmer Bro, he was the one who ended up buying it. But yeah, they just had an unreleased album that they weren't selling to anyone. They just put it up for auction and sold it off to the highest bidder. It seems like the NFT concept is just an additional step to this auctioning process.
I don't know. I mean, how many people know how to become a authorized bidder at Sotheby's or whoever the hell these auction houses are? I don't know if being an NFT user, it makes it more difficult to bid in an auction.
It's got to be more difficult to learn about NFTs, to acquire some Ethereum and to bid on them, find the marketplace and then bid on them.
I don't know. I mean, the market has made it fairly simple from what I understand. I've never done it.
I haven't either.
But from what I understand, there's been, given the craze surrounding NFTs, it can't be that hard to get into them these days, given that, companies want to make it as simple as possible. But to become a registered bidder with an auction house probably requires some hoop jumping too.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
But you can continue to get stuff at auction houses, and that may or may not be the case with NFTs going forward.
Well, I mean, I think NFTs are probably never going to go away completely, but their market share is definitely falling off big time. According to the Wall Street Journal, the sale of non-fungible tokens, or NFTs, fell to a daily average of about 19,000 this week, a 92% decline from a peak of about 225,000 back in September.
That's still a whole lot more than I would like to hear about.
This is a global phenomenon, though, 19,000 in a week.
That's fair.
The number of active wallets in the NFT market fell 88% to about 14,000 last week from a high of 119,000 in November. NFTs are Bitcoin-like digital tokens that act like a certificate of ownership that live on a blockchain. Rising interest rates have crushed risky bets across financial markets, and NFTs are among the most speculative.
I didn't even like the term Bitcoin-like tokens. That doesn't make sense. Bitcoin's not a token. I don't see how it's like Bitcoin.
They're just trying to explain it in one sentence. It's the best they can do.
Well, it's stupid, and it's making normies think dumb things.
Since hitting highs in November, the tech-heavy NASDAQ composite has fallen 23%, and Bitcoin has fallen by 43%. The Federal Reserve is slated to raise rates, which is also in the news today. They did that. As the central
So they did raise the rates. Weren't the interest rates zero?
Close to it, yeah. Okay. They raised them, I think, once earlier this year to like 0.25 or something. Many NFT owners are finding their investments are worth significantly less than when they bought them, as investors, they say, are turning to more defensive stocks like consumer staples. An NFT of the first tweet from Twitter, Twitter Incorporated co-founder Jack Dorsey.
But they don't own that. Twitter does.
Well, they own an image of it.
Okay, cool. Take a screenshot. Now I own an image of it too.
But they own the image of it that Jack Dorsey put up for sale. And he sold it in March of last year for $2.9 million to Sina Estavi, the chief executive of Malaysia-based blockchain company Bridge Oracle. Earlier this year, Mr. Estavi put the NFT up for auction. Go ahead and take a guess. If you haven't heard,
how much did he buy it? No. How much?
$2.9 million worth of crypto.
That was what the buyer bought it for.
This is an image of a tweet from Jack Dorsey.
The very first tweet ever.
That's correct, yeah.
On Twitter.
Or at least Jack Dorsey's first tweet. I don't know if it's the first one.
I'm gonna guess $3,000.
It actually got as high as $14,000.
Wow. It's horrible.
But
that's still abysmal, yeah.
But it was, I guess they had like, you know how on eBay they have a minimum that you can set for your auctions? I guess he had a minimum set and it didn't reach that, so he
I would
rejected.
imagine not.
Yeah, he rejected the $14,000. He said, though, now get this, this guy who spent $2.9 million on an image said the failure of the auction wasn't a sign the market's deteriorating, but it's just a normal fluctuation that could occur in any market.
Yeah, I would be in denial too if I lost almost $2.9 million.
That's serious denial.
Buying an image of a tweet.
He says the NFT market's one that's still developing, and it's impossible to predict how it will look in a few years. He says, quote, I will never regret buying it because this NFT is my capital.
He says, quote, I refuse to look at what the facts say about what happened to me.
Bro,
that's sad.
It isn't capital if you can't use it to do anything. It's not capital if you cannot turn around and sell it for something.
Yeah,
it did not hold its value.
No, I hate to say it, dude. Accept that $14,000 for it, and
may never see that again.
I mean, he's never going to see more than $14,000.
Yeah, it may be $7,000 if he tries again in another month.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to go back up. I don't think he's ever going to get more than $14,000 for it at this point.
People are realizing they can just go take a snipping tool screenshot of the tweet if they wanted to.
Another NFT buyer purchased a Snoop Dogg curated NFT titled Doggy number 4292 in early April for about $32,000 worth of cryptocurrency. They're using Ether. The NFT, an image of a green-skinned astronaut standing on what looks like a Hollywood Walk of Fame star, is now up for auction with an asking price of...
Hold on. He bought it for $32,000. It's just some garbage, nonsensical NFT. It's one of 5,000 or so, it sounds like.
Right.
It's at least one of 5,000.
Well, Snoop Dogg curated it.
Yeah, I was like, did he draw it?
No,
it probably just means he put a stamp of approval on it and got a cut of the profit.
That's
is
what it
what
means.
I would guess.
Yeah.
And it was $32,000, $150.
No. This is what the dude wants for it. So you have to think in the other direction. This person
bought it. Oh, and now he's trying to sell it.
He's trying to sell it. What do you think he thinks it's worth now? What do you think he thinks he should get for it after spending $32,000?
$1.5 million
in April, by the way.
$3,000 million $100.
A month ago.
$1.5 million.
$25.5 million is his asking price. And the current bid. Now, I wish it linked to this thing because I would love to see where it was at. This article came out yesterday. So it's pretty fresh. The current bid for this $32,000 when he paid for it is 0.07 and change Ether, or at this time around $200 worth of Ether.
There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agristhosting.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us 603-283-6160, although I suspect if you're one of these people who spent an insane amount of money, and insane amount of money, that's a relative term, but who spent tens of thousands of dollars on an NFT, and now you're looking at it and it's worth tiny percentages of what it was when you bought it, I suspect you're not willing to call in and tell us about it, but we invite you to 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria, Bonnie, and Ian, and that's what we're talking about here, the collapse of the NFT industry, which we knew this was inevitable. We said the entire time that we've been talking about NFTs here on the show that it was a bubble. It was the tulip bulb craze.
It's a fad
of the 21st century. Yes, absolutely a fad. It got hyped up into oblivion to the point where people were buying 6-pixel rocks, and it was like 3 pixels across and 3 pixels. It was 3 pixels across and 2 pixels down, and people were paying tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands
at least,
for these, what they were calling rocks, and they weren't even rocks. And of course, you had the stupid ape club. What's it called?
The Bored Ape Club.
Bored Ape Club. Yes, and of course, at the Bitcoin conference in Miami, apparently there was a party that you couldn't even get into without being able to show that you had one of these Bored Ape clubs. I bet you that party won't be requiring that next year. And honestly,
and I bet you it was boring.
I wouldn't have wanted to go to that party. I was like, hey, look, that's where all the idiots are congregating. Let's go sell them. Let's go sell them some tulip bulbs, right? But it's sad at the same time because these people, they did put a lot of money into these things. I wish they had thought more about it and what value it could have for them to have this Snoop Dogg curated NFT that they bought for $32,000. It was
that anyone could right-click on and save and keep a copy for themselves.
Yes, that's another issue with NFTs, of course.
Or the URL that they point to could disappear. When I heard about that, I was like, that was the line drawn. And I was like, okay, these things are complete trash. It points to a URL that shows your certificate. And that URL could disappear if the server that runs the URL disappears.
That's very concerning when I learned that, yeah.
I was like, that's the dumbest part of all this crap.
I guess some of them are on IPFS, which in theory would be less likely to go down. But again, if there's only one server mirroring it, then it's still risk. risky.
It could just be my ignorance about NFTs coming into play, and it's not really worth hashing out on the radio. But I don't understand why a web browser or a website even entered the picture in the first place. Why wasn't the wallet's owners? Why wasn't the address of the wallet on the blockchain as the owner of that particular token? Like, once you send a token to a wallet,
let's clarify something. The way as I understand it, and we're all talking about something we've never done here, right? The way I understand from having read stories about the NFT is when you buy the NFT, you're buying a token, right? You're buying a non-fungible token that has some sort of data on it. That data points to, in many cases, is simply a URL. So it says that you, Aria DiMezzo, are now the owner, quote unquote, of the image of a Bored Ape or a Snoop Dogg thing or whatever it is that's at this URL on some centralized server somewhere on the internet.
And that could change without your knowledge. Okay?
Yes, they could change the image completely.
Yeah, you bought Bored Ape number 97 or whatever. You like that ape. Maybe you look at it 6 months from now and you're like, wait a minute, my Bored Ape didn't have sunglasses, but now it does, and there's nothing you can do about it.
No, there's nothing you could do about it.
I see why it was designed that way now, but
that's
that just makes it so much worse.
That's if you didn't get scammed and completely taken for a ride, like with what was it, Pixelmon that we talked about a few weeks ago? This thing that was advertised with certain artwork that was nowhere near what actually was released, and the guy that created this seems to have disappeared off the face of the planet.
I can't say that I blame him.
After claiming he was going to make it right, and then poof, he's gone.
Well, that's what they do a lot of these places. I remember Bitcoin Silver, one of the ICOs that I watched at the time, did the same thing. It was obvious to anyone who's paying attention that this was a scam and these people were never going to see their money. But sure enough, this person was on Twitter. No, we're just running into some technical issues. We're going to have this sorted out soon. Just hold tight. Everything is fine. Gone.
Wow.
So the Wall Street Journal is looking at the numbers are going down as far as what people are getting when they put their NFTs up for sale again after paying a whole lot of money for them.
Yeah, this one guy you mentioned bought the NFT for $32,000
worth of crypto.
Is trying to sell it for how much? He said
$25.5 million.
And he's the
current bid $210 worth of Ether.
That's still higher than I would have expected. I would recommend this person as well, accept that offer. You're probably not going to get a better one.
Isn't it a little bit strange that they're trying to sell them so fast as well? Wouldn't you think you buy something for $35,000 and at least hold on to it for more than a year?
Well, the one guy did hold his for about a year, the guy that bought the Twitter thing.
But there's a lot of economic uncertainty right now. And as they pointed out at the beginning of this article, when you're in one of these periods where it's like, is the USD going to collapse? Is America going to collapse? You don't want that much money in a speculative investment. You want into something realer like gold or Lockheed Martin stocks or something like that.
Plus, if you have the expectation, let's say you have the realistic expectation that the NFT market isn't going to go up over time, then you better sell it now so you can get out while the getting out is maybe even somewhat good.
But that's what I was saying. I was saying it seems like these people don't believe in their own NFTs if they're trying to sell them so quickly.
The lack of interest isn't that unique, according to the Journal. Interest in NFTs measured by the number of searches for the term peaked in January, according to Google Trends, and has fallen roughly 80% since then. That imbalance between the supply and demand is also hurting the NFT market. There are about 5 NFTs available for every buyer. According to data from coin analytics firm Chainalysis, as of the end of April, there have been 9.2 million NFTs sold, which were bought by 1.8 million people.
So they flooded the market, being reckless, silly people as they often are.
Well, there's no limit to this market. Everybody can jump in, which is what we saw happen in the last year and a half.
You can jump in with a literal pixel.
Yeah. But every corporation jumped in. I think you were describing Ticketmaster was selling NFT or giving away NFTs of tickets.
If you buy any tickets to one of the Knotfest shows, you evidently get a Knotfest NFT. I don't even know what that means.
Same thing was true with AMC Theaters. They started giving away NFTs.
But they also are exploring taking Dogecoin or something like that.
Yeah, they're taking crypto. AMC's taking crypto.
Yeah, so good on AMC for that.
They're officially doing it already, or they're thinking about it?
They've been taking it since sometime last year, I think. The largest U.S. crypto exchange is still betting on NFTs. Coinbase launched a beta site last month. Talk about late to the party.
Oh, good God. Can we please watch this destroy Coinbase?
And 4 million people signed up. It will allow users to connect existing wallets to their site and buy and sell NFTs, initially without trading fees, and to create NFTs through the site. But, I mean, this is a year later. Coinbase is coming in and launching a brand new NFT site, and it's like on the decline right now.
That's why they want the state to come in and regulate all of these other industries so that Coinbase can never be late to the party again. Because Coinbase, if you didn't get your NFT through Coinbase, it's an illegal NFT. That's what Coinbase wants to see. That way, it doesn't matter. That's why they're bunnying up with the state, and that's always why they've been bunnying up with the state, so that they can weaponize the state and use it to protect themselves against competition, because they're too big as a corporation. They're slow to adapt to things.
Right.
For the longest time, the only cryptocurrencies you could get from Coinbase was Litecoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin.
That's right. That's true. Now they've got dozens.
It took them a very long time to add Bitcoin Cash, and I didn't even hate Coinbase then. I hated them because this was around the time that they were, making a show out of fighting the IRS, and everyone really knew that they were going to cave in. But I was like, Coinbase still has a role to play here. This is where you would send your grandmother if you wanted your grandmother to buy cryptocurrency in a way that she just couldn't mess it up. She couldn't go to buy Bitcoin and end up with Terra or Bitcoin Gold or Bitcoin SV or something like that. And that was valuable. Coinbase is no longer that. It took them forever to move into the wider cryptocurrency space. And by the time they did, other cryptocurrency exchanges, other smaller exchanges had already beat them to it. And of course, things like Monero, Zencash, Horizon had come into existence, and Coinbase is never going to catch up with that. And now
there's still a place for people who don't know anything about crypto to go and get crypto. One of the local business owners in town.
But now you can get NFTs and other nonsense there. So
sure, I mean it's more complicated. It's probably more complicated than it's been. But I
don't want to send my grandmother to get Bitcoin and her saying, "Hey, I bought an NFT of this cute little puppy dog," and now Coinbase has created that possibility, and that was, as far as I could tell, the only legitimate role Coinbase ever served.
Yeah, good point. I mean, who knows how much they're pushing this, but the NFTs, of course, went insane in 2021 as musicians, artists, celebrities, and companies jumped on the bandwagon. Artist Beeple, whoever that is, sold an NFT tied to his artwork for $69 million worth of crypto.
What could this music possibly be? Because none of the three of us have...
Says artwork.
I've never heard of it.
But okay.
Wait, it says what?
Like an actual physical artist.
Okay.
Adidas, Nike minted and sold NFTs tied to their sneakers. McDonald's sold an NFT tied to the re-release of the McRib sandwich.
I hate being human beings so much when you said that.
And that's just a fraction of it. I mean, literally every company out there, every corporation was jumping into the NFT scene. All the while, none of them are taking crypto for payments.
No, of course not. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The US's central bank has raised interest rates by 0.5 percentage point in a bid to get a handle on rising inflation. It's the first time in 22 years that the Federal Reserve has increased rates this much. Fed Chair Jerome Powell has warned that more increases are expected this year.
Inflation is much too high, and we understand the hardship it is causing, and we're moving expeditiously to bring it back down. We have both the tools we need and the resolve that it will take to restore price stability on behalf of American families and businesses. COVID-related lockdowns in China are likely to further exacerbate supply chain disruptions as well. Against the backdrop of the rapidly evolving economic environment, our policy has been adapting, and it will continue to do so. The committee is determined to take the measures necessary to restore price stability. The American economy is very strong and well-positioned to handle tighter monetary policy.
Thousands of people have protested across the United States for a woman's right to choose after a leaked Supreme Court draft showed that justices are getting ready to overturn abortion rights. Chief Justice Roberts said the leak was a betrayal and that the Supreme Court will investigate. US correspondent Caroline Malone reports.
From New York to San Francisco, Boston to Chicago, Atlanta to Houston, there were groups of protests on Tuesday night against a move to repeal abortion rights in the United States. In Seattle, people called for an escalating series of mass action, including possible national strikes if the constitutional right to abortion is removed. Late Monday, US media published a leaked Supreme Court draft document that said the nearly 50-year-old abortion rights law Roe v. Wade was damaging and should be lifted. If that happens, it will be up to individual states to decide on abortion access. Polls show nearly 60% of people in the US support abortion access in most cases, while less than 30% say the law should be overturned. Caroline Malone, Washington.
Police in Los Angeles have arrested a man who attacked comedian Dave Chappelle on stage while holding a replica handgun. The 48-year-old performer was unharmed in the incident. Ira Spitzer has more from California.
Videos from the incident show a man rushing the stage at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles and trying to tackle Dave Chappelle during his performance. Los Angeles police have identified the suspect as 23-year-old Isaiah Lee and say he was armed with a replica handgun containing a knife blade. The suspect was then beaten by security and others and taken to the hospital with apparent injuries while Chappelle continued performing. Numerous other comedians were in attendance, including Chris Rock, who jokingly asked if that was Will Smith, a reference to Smith slapping Rock on stage during this year's Academy Awards.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, continuing our look at Australia's general election. It takes place on May the 21st, and Prime Minister Scott Morrison is battling for his political life. His Liberal National Coalition is in trouble at the polls, and the Australian Labor Party, led by Anthony Albanese, is daring to dream of victory. Benedict Brooke is a senior reporter for the website news.com.au.
Labor's launched their campaign in Perth this week. And look, the opinion polls are, as far as you can take opinion polls, but they're looking pretty good on a two-party basis. They've got 53% so far.
He says Labour has overhauled its manifesto and is focusing on some major pledges, including equity for first-time home buyers, one of several big issues in Australia.
Well, they're also looking at cutting prescription costs. There's cheaper childcare. There's taking more action on electric cars. Climate change, as I've said, is seen as a bit of a blind spot for the Liberals, for the coalition. So Labour's trying to kind of do some kind of vote-winning things in that space. On the Liberal side, they're talking up their traditional areas, the economy, national security. But COVID has, ripped through economies worldwide, so that's more shaky.
And this week, the Australian Central Bank raised interest rates for the first time in more than a decade, dealing a fresh challenge to Prime Minister Morrison's re-election efforts. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. The US central banks raised interest rates by 0.5 percentage point in a bid to get a handle on inflation. Thousands of people have protested across the US for a woman's right to choose after a leaked Supreme Court draft showed justices are getting ready to overturn abortion rights. And police in Los Angeles have arrested a man who attacked comedian Dave Chappelle on stage.
Researchers were able to successfully teach a father how to communicate his emotions with rudimentary hand gestures. The stunning development happened after Stanford researchers spent 9 months trying to train 42-year-old Pittsburgh father Ron Myers to express simple sentiments like pride and love in a way few thought possible. To conduct the study, researchers used large, simplistic diagrams depicting hand gestures a dad might use to show emotion in a way Ron could easily comprehend.
We would often leave Band of Brothers or 30 for 30 reruns on to help him stay comfortable.
When Ron was able to successfully identify an emotion, he was given rewards to reinforce good behavior, including buffalo wings or a moment to read a page of a Tom Clancy novel. Despite Ron's breakthrough, researchers say he still has a way to go before achieving full emotional maturity, as after several months of work with Ron, he still retreats to the corner of the lab to look up drywalling techniques on the internet whenever his real family drops by to see him.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, where you can take control of the airwaves and talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to do that. Again, the number 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Bonnie.
And coming up, PayPal is targeting independent media, as well as a story that hits closer to home. One of the friendlier journalists here in New Hampshire, Damian Fisher, has written a story about some Sununu detention centers. And Bonnie, you have that story, and we're going to get into it. But I have this story here from China that apparently has been talked about. But I mean, what's going on in China right now? It's an ongoing topic, and we have not talked about it on any of the nights that I've been on. So obviously, I want to weigh in on this.
Yeah, please, because we did cover it in depth on a couple of nights over the last month.
Well, how can you not? Look at what these people are doing. Look at what these monsters.
I suspect plenty of the U.S. media is ignoring this completely, but yeah, there's absolutely horrifying things going on over in not just Shanghai, but elsewhere. Shanghai is sort of the worst of the worst, where people are literally now being locked into their apartment complexes. They're installing huge metal fences outside of the apartment buildings, outside of the entrances, to literally prevent people from escaping. That has resulted, of course, in people dying in fires. When fires engulf the building, they cannot escape. So,
I'd never even thought about that possibility.
I saw footage last night. The Northrop Gundam.
I don't know how you had the stomach to sit through these sorts of things.
He does this constantly.
I had to scroll away from it.
That's probably one of the first times ever. He's always like, Bonnie, look at this horrible thing happening. Look at this dog dying. Its legs broke.
Anyway, the Northrop Gundam channel on Twitter is just all day long reposting imagery and video from China, and it's just absolutely terrible what's going on to those people. The food that they're getting, if they get it, is in many cases rotting. It's moldy.
Left out in the sun for hours.
Yeah, it may have been left out for many hours before they're allowed to go and retrieve it from the checkpoints nearby their apartment complexes. We were reading posts from one guy who is, I don't know if he's American, but he's not a Chinese person. He's been there throughout this whole thing, locked down. He volunteered to be one of the sort of the runners for his apartment complex.
That's right, because only one person per apartment building.
Apartment complex.
Okay, it's two now. When I first heard about it, I thought it was one.
Well, and this was a few weeks ago. They may have changed it. They're
true.
Constantly changing the rules on these people. Of course, the testing was supposed to be going on every single day. You're supposed to go and be tested.
And this is all in the name of having 0 cases of COVID-19 within China.
That's the claim, yeah. Zero COVID policy.
But that's obviously not possible unless they just shut down the border, don't allow any tourism in
Well, they've done that in places, and it didn't help. Like, I don't remember where it was. There's some island that... Wasn't that where the military was doing the hardcore...
That wasn't on
lockdown.
an island. No, that was somewhere. But the military did do a hardcore lockdown, and they severely restricted access, and were cleaning every single day, and like cleaning the bathroom if every time somebody used it, just totally sanitizing everything, and COVID still got in there.
I mean, the pro-lockdown people, the pro-social distancing people, they should really be watching what's happening in China, because if China, using tactics like these, cannot create a situation where there is no COVID-19, then your little weak lockdown is not going to do it either.
It also shows people that the weak lockdown that they think is harmless can evolve into something completely tyrannical and crazy like this.
This was originally supposed to be a 5-day lockdown. It's now on probably day 50-something, because the last time we talked about it was last week, and it was day 45 at that time. So yeah.
Chinese authorities are now using bolts and wires to forcibly lock residents into their apartments to prevent them from leaving their homes. And you said this came to my attention today, and the article is dated from today, but they've been doing this for a few days now.
Oh, more than a few, probably. I saw that within the last couple of weeks on Northrop Gundam on Twitter.
So the South China Morning Post has video about this, and it's absolutely as bad as you would expect. They are taking those, I don't know what they're called, but they're just solid steel poles, and they're just driving them into the concrete in front of people's doors, and they're taking these thick steel wires, and they're wrapping the door handles up so people...
There's literally no way you can open this door. It is completely stopped from being open.
And I can imagine that, bashing out your window and jumping out is going to lead to any better results.
Well, there have been people doing that, and they're jumping to their deaths because they're so despondent. I mean, we know how many people were more suicidal in just the United States, where the lockdowns were nowhere near as severe, of course, as what is happening in China right now, in Shanghai and elsewhere. So, I mean, there's a whole compilation video of Chinese people jumping to their doom.
I'm not surprised to hear it. I mean, when you're locked down like this, there's nothing else you can do.
People will people go insane when they are put in these situations. I mean, I've been in
solitary
jail.
confinement is classified as a torture for a reason.
Yeah. I've been in jail on a couple of occasions as an activist, and the most recent one, of course, was last year after the Crypto 6 arrest. I spent 69 days behind bars.
Nice.
And I'm fine.
I always want to say
it.
based.
For me, going into solitary confinement, it's like, okay, I get more time to read. It's not a big deal. Maybe it's because I'm institutionalized. I don't know. Whatever. But a lot of people, I don't know if it's most, but a lot of people freak out. There's pounding on doors, in some cases all night long, until they come in and like tase the person or whatever, somehow put them down. People just cannot handle being confined against their will. They go crazy. And if they are able to open up a window and jump out, like in jail, you can't do that, right? There's bars on the windows. But at your apartment complex, you can slide open those glass doors, walk out on the balcony, and then keep walking.
It's understandable. I mean, human beings are animals, and I've never seen an animal that was happy to be caged.
No.
Except, to be honest, my dog. She loved her kennel back when she had it.
Well, humans are social animals, specifically. So humans, except for the most... the people that don't like people, right? Like there are those folks.
They say that though, but I mean, there's no one who's just sitting around hating people, not wanting anything to do with other individuals. I'm
introverts. That's the word I was looking for.
I'm an introvert, but yeah. I still need social interaction with people. I still go out and I do stuff.
Yeah, most people do, and those folks. They have a real hard time. The extroverts, people that need contact with others every single day, they cannot handle this stuff. And they go nuts. I'm watching footage right now of these suited men, because all the footage from Shanghai that has these Chinese agents dressed in full bodysuits, like the hazmat kind of suits, going around and doing all manner of just tyrannical stuff. They're either setting up fences or barbed wire or whatever. In this case, they're banning people from opening their own fridges. It's video from someone in their apartment. Somebody in their apartment. The footage is of the camera point of view is from the person laying on a bed or sitting on this bed, so their legs are out in front of them as two men or two agents, can't tell if they're men or women, are in the apartment in their full bodysuits. One of them is putting a label across, a large sticker across the front of the refrigerator. So the sticker goes from the top portion of the refrigerator to the bottom portion of the refrigerator.
That way, if you open one of the doors, it's like a tamper-proof seal.
Correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if you open up one of the doors, it's going to break the sticker, and next time they do the inspection.
But what is the point of that? You're not allowed to eat?
It doesn't explain why this is happening. It's just happening. And then
I suspect it's because too many videos are leaking of people taking videos of their empty fridges.
But this person's taking video of this entire thing happening.
Oh, yeah,
and so
that's
after the first guy applies the label to the fridge, the second man who's standing there has a spray bottle, and he starts spraying, like spritzing the fridge with whatever is in this spray bottle, and then goes around spraying the room, and that's the end of the video. Most of the videos are usually without much context. You kind of have to trust whoever it is that's posting it to either interpret what's being said or give you some sort of context for what's going on.
And that's hard to do, but there's really not much sensible context where the Chinese authorities are tamper-proof sealing up people's refrigerators after they've already been locking them in their homes and using wires and steel bars to trap them, and barbed wire fence to trap them in their homes. Absolutely horrifying stuff coming out of China, and the worst is probably yet to come. We're going to talk more about it at 603-283-6160, all in the name of squashing COVID and bringing it down to 0 total cases.
This is why we need to keep our gun rights in the United States.
Well, the Chinese people not having guns certainly is not helping them. 603-283-6160.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
How many lawyers does it take to change a light bulb? None. They'd rather keep their clients in the dark. There are too many lawyer jokes to count. However, there are some lawyers with more noble intentions. At the Institute for Justice, we bring the light to our clients. We are a non-profit public interest law firm with clear values and principles. At IJ, we fight for those whose most basic rights are denied by the government. Visit our website today at ij.org.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where you can join us, 603-283-6160. If you'd like to weigh in, that's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Bonnie.
And coming up just over a month and a half from now, I think about 7 weeks from now, Forkfest.party is the website. It's at Rogers Campground. You don't need a ticket. The Porcupine Freedom Festival is oversold at this point. God willing, they've stopped selling tickets by this point, but who knows? You don't need tickets for Forkfest, though. Just check it out, forkfest.party. All you need is to book an RV site, a camping site, or a motel room with Rogers Campground, and that's it. You're in. There's no organized events or anything like that. If you want to organize something, you are more than welcome to. You're also welcome to let other people know about it. At the Forkfest Telegram chat, you can find links to all of that at forkfest.party. So check it out. I'm planning to be there currently. I've officially requested the permission of my federal handlers to go there this year.
Great.
And it's rubber stamping at this point. I mean, it's still here in New Hampshire. So I will be there, and hopefully you will be there as well. That's forkfest.party. We're talking here about China and what's happening in Shanghai. And not just Shanghai. Evidently, Beijing is also part of the lockdown. China's is a genuine lockdown. What we call the lockdowns in the United States, they were pretty bad, and they were pretty tyrannical in some places. But
for sure.
Here in New Hampshire, it was just, okay, you can't go to the bars for 2 weeks. And it was very minor. It was restrictive. It was tyranny. But it was nothing like what we're seeing in China, which is people being essentially welded into their homes, having tamper-proof seals put over their refrigerators for unknown reasons, and just bizarre draconian policies as China is doing everything that it can to bring its country down to having no COVID cases, which to me is bizarre. That can't possibly be what they're after here, because that means that they can never allow in any other travelers from other countries because they could have COVID. Mm-hmm. And in which case, all of this ramps back up again. I think the Western world finally came to terms with this at some point during the last year, which was, you know, COVID is always going to be here. The Delta strain, the Omega strain, whatever the current strain is that people were scared of, there's always going to be a new one, and no amount of vaccination is going to do anything about it. No amount of lockdowns or face masking, none of that's going to change it. It's always going to be here. But China is what the social distancing lockdown peoples would ever dream of, right?
Sure.
Imagine all of those tyrannical policies, the lockdowns, the social distancing, forcing people to wear masks. Take all of that and take it up to its most extreme, most tyrannical point.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing they're not doing is executing people yet.
As far as we know.
That we know of, yeah. Because how would we find they would just take the person's phone if the person even recorded them killing them.
Eventually you would likely hear, my loved one never came home from the camps. Okay,
well,
so
well, if your loved one lives in a different place than you, how would you know?
Well, given the large number of people that they are taking to these camps, some of them are going to come back, I presume, at some point.
What if the person lives alone?
Well, they could always say, no, they just died of COVID. I'm sorry.
Okay, if they live alone, then they can easily disappear them. I'm talking about the people that have families that they would then come back to, presuming they're not taking the entire family and locking them up. So I don't know what the policies are or whatever. But we know they do have camps. We know they are holding God knows how many people. I've seen the images of these camps. What we don't know is how many camps there are and how many thousands of people per camp there are. I mean,
are these camps similar to their hospitals? These hastily erected, these quote hospitals, these hastily erected things where there was like a bed and then 2 feet next to you there was another bed, and
that's exactly what the camps are like. Yeah.
Okay, so it's just these thrown together,
just rooms with people in them or cells with people in them.
Are they using the ghost cities for these places?
Good question. I don't know.
Well, one thing I think about this is that it doesn't make the New Hampshire or the United States lockdowns any less bad than these lockdowns. It proves that the lockdowns were as bad as we were always saying they were, which is complete, just like crimes against humanity, because it's the same exact thing in different degrees, which makes it just as bad.
I absolutely agree. So Beijing on Tuesday ramped up COVID-related restrictions by banning certain residents, including those from neighborhoods labeled medium and high risk, from leaving the city. So as happened in Australia and I think New Zealand and other places, now people in Beijing, in certain neighborhoods at least, are not allowed to leave the city. And that to me, that's how you know you're under the heel of tyranny and it's not going to let you go. It's going to eventually kill you. Once it says, no, we are not letting you leave, that's it. No one is allowed to leave. That's when you know your government is going to eventually put a bullet in your head.
And when people's governments are getting really bad and they're saying that they're not at the line in the sand yet, like California. I'm not quite at the line in the sand to move to New Hampshire because it's not like they're not letting us leave. You can't wait till they're not letting you leave.
That's too late.
Yes.
Because at that point, that's too late. Yeah.
That's always one of the last lines in the sand before they start the executions. And I'm not saying the government's about to start executing people in Beijing, but it's coming. Mass executions.
That's just the next step.
Yeah. We're already seeing it in Xinjiang where they're running these test sites, these test re-education programs, these murder sites on Muslims. Now they're just going to apply it to the wider population. Anyone who does something they don't disagree with. There are warning signs about this sort of thing coming long before you reach that point where the government says, no one can leave anymore. We're locking down the borders. You're here to stay. There are warning signs. And those warning signs are happening in places here in the United States right now. We're earlier in the warning signs than the people in China. But don't think that the United States is, 50, 60 years away from this sort of nonsense like we're seeing here. Parts of the United States may be 50 or 60 years away, assuming nothing changes in the United States, doesn't collapse or anything like that. But other places like New York, they're not as far away from this nightmare as you would like to think.
Another point that is made here pretty clearly on this Northrop Gundam channel on Twitter is whenever you see the insides of these quarantine camps, there's no social distancing whatsoever.
Well, you can't. It's a prison. It's an overcrowded prison, isn't it?
So, for all the supposed concern, I guess the idea is, well, they've already got COVID, so whatever, just throw them all in together. But there's just no concern whatsoever for transmission of this virus inside the actual quarantine facilities.
Because that's not what it's about.
It's about control. It's about institutionalization, I think, as well. It's like, okay, basically, the Chinese government knows that this thing is going to make the rounds. It's going to get into everybody at some point. So that just means that everybody gets to go spend 2 weeks or whatever inside one of these facilities and become institutionalized to what it's like to be a prisoner.
So the next time the Chinese government says, hey, we're doing it again, you have to go back to this facility for this time for 3 weeks, it won't seem as extreme. And then on the third time, they round them up and they say, oh, okay, yeah, this time you have to stay there and we're going to pull a bullet in your head if you try to escape. You're absolutely right. It's normalizing.
It is.
Kidnapping people and holding them in prison camps against their will over some sort of virus. And yeah, as you pointed out, everyone in China eventually is going to get this virus. And based on what the Chinese government's doing, they're all going to spend time in these camps.
Unless, of course, you work for the Communist Party. And then they have a special area, I'm sure you, where you get really nice food.
And that's not to say the next time with the next strain or whatever, the Chinese government is going to start, putting bullets into people's skulls. But with everything else we've seen, I wouldn't want to trust the Chinese government to be benevolent.
Oh no, these people are straight up evil.
They are the worst of the worst. 603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in. Perhaps help spread the word about how this could very well happen in the United States. 608-283-6160.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too, you know.
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
Besides, we just can't have people floating about unregulated, you know.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The US's central bank has raised interest rates by 0.5 percentage point in a bid to get a handle on rising inflation. It's the first time in 22 years that the Federal Reserve has increased rates this much. Fed Chair Jerome Powell has warned that more increases are expected this year.
Inflation is much too high, and we understand the hardship it is causing, and we're moving expeditiously to bring it back down. We have both the tools we need and the resolve that it will take to restore price stability on behalf of American families and businesses. COVID-related lockdowns in China are likely to further exacerbate supply chain disruptions as well. Against the backdrop of the rapidly evolving economic environment, our policy has been adapting, and it will continue to do so. The committee is determined to take the measures necessary to restore price stability. The American economy is very strong and well-positioned to handle tighter monetary policy.
Thousands of people have protested across the United States for a woman's right to choose after a leaked Supreme Court draft showed that justices are getting ready to overturn abortion rights. Chief Justice Roberts said the leak was a betrayal and that the Supreme Court will investigate. US correspondent Caroline Malone reports.
From New York to San Francisco, Boston to Chicago, Atlanta to Houston, there were groups of protests on Tuesday night against a move to repeal abortion rights in the United States. In Seattle, people called for an escalating series of mass action, including possible national strikes if the constitutional right to abortion is removed. Late Monday, US media published a leaked Supreme Court draft document that said the nearly 50-year-old abortion rights law Roe v. Wade was damaging and should be lifted. If that happens, it will be up to individual states to decide on abortion access. Polls show nearly 60% of people in the US support abortion access in most cases, while less than 30% say the law should be overturned. Caroline Malone, Washington.
Police in Los Angeles have arrested a man who attacked comedian Dave Chappelle on stage while holding a replica handgun. The 48-year-old performer was unharmed in the incident. Ira Spitzer has more from California.
Videos from the incident show a man rushing the stage at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles and trying to tackle Dave Chappelle during his performance. Los Angeles police have identified the suspect as 23-year-old Isaiah Lee and say he was armed with a replica handgun containing a knife blade. The suspect was then beaten by security and others and taken to the hospital with apparent injuries while Chappelle continued performing. Numerous other comedians were in attendance, including Chris Rock, who jokingly asked if that was Will Smith, a reference to Smith slapping Rock on stage during this year's Academy Awards.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. If you would like to join us, that's 603-283-6160. One of the independent media channels or shows out there that it still exists. Not so much on YouTube these days. I mean, we are technically on YouTube, but we spent a lot of the COVID-19 pandemic, scamdemic, whatever you would like to call it, being banned from YouTube. And that's why we're over on Odyssey. You can find our channel there at video.freetalklive.com. If you want to watch us at a place where we're there from day to day, I can't help but notice that we're on like 5-6 months here since we've been suspended or since we've been given a strike from YouTube. And that just happens to coincide with people no longer talking about COVID-19. So we can stand on here, we can criticize the invasion of Ukraine all we want. We can criticize the propaganda against the Russian government or the pro-Ukrainian propaganda all we want. They don't seem to be willing at this point to censor us over that, but they could at any time, as they have censored so many others. And this is why...
It's probably just because we haven't been reported.
Probably. And this is why Odyssey is so important. Video.freetalklive.com if you want to follow us there. We're always there day to day. You don't have to worry about whether or not we've been suspended or whether or not we have 2 strikes, so we're not streaming because we don't want to get a third one. We're always there. That's video.freetalklive.com. Speaking of COVID-19, though, we have Sarah calling from New Mexico. Sarah, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for taking my call. I am so proud of myself. I got my COVID booster today at Walgreens.
Why are you proud of yourself, though?
Well, because I've been wanting to do this since like last winter, and it was just so cold. I was just waiting because I thought that things would get better. It would change in about a month, and it did get better. And I thought, well, I don't have to get the booster now. It's the rates are going down, and
so
then
you feel like you accomplished
Sunday,
something to be proud of, right? You did a good.
Well,
it was too cold in April in Albuquerque, New Mexico, for her to go outside.
Well, the thing is that they were telling everybody to get boosters a while ago when it was really cold, like November or December, and I said I'm just gonna wait until when it like February or March.
Other than hanging around at the hospital to eat lunch, do you even leave the house anyway?
Yeah, I leave the house, but
okay.
What happened is that I went to the church, okay, and then I was in a van.
You know, communism is anti-religion, right?
Well, let me finish the story. The lady after the service came out with 2 masks, and she told me that she tested positive for COVID. She was warning me so that I will be sitting away from her or walk home in the van, and that's when I decided to run out and get a booster. So this lady got her like a home test maybe 2 weeks ago because she was not feeling well, and then they called her during a service that she had COVID. She got the confirmation during a call.
So you only wanted to go get a booster after you encountered somebody who had COVID at some point?
Yeah, and I was in her van last Sunday for 30 minutes, and she sat there with no masks. Okay, and then
Why'd you get in the van?
Right in the back of her. You know what I mean?
Why did you get in the van if you were so concerned?
Well, why did she come to church if she got tested 2 weeks ago?
But why were you in her van?
She did not know she had COVID. She got the result while in the service. She found out.
Well, that's why she went to church after getting tested. She didn't know that she had COVID. When you get tested, you don't just put your life on hold for 2 weeks while you wait on the results. People have stuff to do.
Why did she get tested? Look at it. She got tested because she was not feeling something was wrong. She was sniffling that she wanted to get tested.
Oh, no. Sniffling.
Sarah, you know that the booster isn't going to stop you from getting COVID, right?
Well, no, but I just want to say this so-called legacy church, they got fined $10,000, $500 a day when it was mandatory to have a mask. And I was told that church got shut down. They were not allowed to have services at all.
Why are you going to this church if you're so concerned with COVID and you know that they are not as concerned as you are? Why are you going there?
Right. Well, I talked to the pastor today. I left a message with him, and then he called me back. And what he said was that the pastor encourages, if you feel sick, if you're not doing well, will encourage you to stay home until you feel better. Make sure that you don't feel better so you don't spread it around.
Sure.
But
you didn't answer my question, Sarah. I'm just asking you a simple question. Why are you going to a church that is not as safe as you would like them to be?
You can always watch Joyce Meyer on YouTube any day.
Well, here's the thing. The reason is because I'm going to this COVID virus church, okay, no mask church.
Why though, Sarah? Why are you going to that church?
Okay, they're the only one that's, nice enough to pick me up and bring me back home on the van.
That's the van.
I'm saying?
I understand.
Yeah, and then,
what kind of a communist goes to church anyway?
Yeah, you can watch Joyce Meyer on YouTube.
She doesn't know what YouTube is.
Oh, yeah, she doesn't have a smartphone.
Is this the Joyce Meyer church?
No.
The thing is, I've been doing that, watching TV at home, but I'm really doing this for my mom. She's always praying that I go to church in person.
Where does she live?
She lives in California, and then I have to make her happy. You know what I mean? I want her, because that's all she's whining about all the time, So then she got all excited when I said, I found a church that picks me up and takes me back home. She was all happy about it.
Is your mom a communist too?
No, she doesn't care. She doesn't care about that. But look,
Sarah, I have only been through New Mexico. I've not spent any significant amount of time there. I know in Mississippi, you couldn't walk more than 100 yards without passing at least one, maybe two churches. Is there not a church within walking distance of wherever you live?
Well, right now where I live, I am not on a bus line.
That's not at all what I asked.
No, there is no church that I cannot walk to because I kind of live not. Okay, the problem is before I could catch a bus to a church. Now I cannot. I have to take a taxi to a bus line and then get to a church. And this is the one that's on I live kind of where I don't have bus service on Sunday.
Well, that sounds like the communist dream, if you ask me, Sarah.
Also, I would like to say, my mom complains that I don't go to church all the time, and I just don't go. That's the solution to your problem if this is the biggest problem going on in your life.
That's also a really good point. But I mean, the world that Sarah's that she wants to create is exactly like that, where she has to get a ride to a bus stop so she can take city transportation to the church or to the grocery store or whatever, and then take city transportation on the way back. And that's not possible, so she's having to rely on private transportation, and no one wants to do that because it's not profitable.
Well, no, you see, in a communist world, everything would be perfect. The trains would be there on time. Tracks would go everywhere, so she wouldn't have to go somewhere. She wouldn't have to use private transportation. The communists would do it all for her.
With a smile on their face because they're doing it for the good of humanity.
Well, that's more or less why the people are picking her up to bring her to church.
Because,
to be fair.
Why?
They think they're doing it for the best of humanity. They're exposing her to the teachings of Jesus. They're helping her, get saved, get into heaven, all of that stuff that they happen to believe. That's fine. I don't care. But to sit here and then criticize those same people, Sarah, for doing you a favor, that's deplorable. That's what these people are going out of their way. They're the only church willing to come to where you live and pick you up and bring you to church and then take you home. And you're complaining.
Ungrateful.
Yes,
yeah.
Because this lady got tested for COVID-19 and then tested positive, and you're not even sick, right? You're proud of yourself for going out and getting a booster shot, which is fine. If you're afraid and that helps make you feel less afraid. I don't agree.
Because it isn't going to stop COVID.
No, and hopefully you're not of childbirth giving age because they just came out today. I know she's not, but I meant people in general, because they just came out today that Pfizer advises against taking it if you're pregnant.
And if you're breastfeeding, if I recall correctly, right?
Yep.
Oh, by the way, I'm being facetious about the communist thing. I don't want anyone listening to think I'm a communist or I believe any of that horse crap.
Sarah, the alternative, is to always buy your own car. Then you can go to whichever church you want.
She'd have to work for that, though.
She would, and she doesn't want to do that. I wish we'd gotten her to circle back to the point about you pointed out to her that it's not going to protect you, that booster. You're still going to get COVID. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it And once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world. So I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project early movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You're invited to join us. 603-283-6160 if you would like to weigh in. Again, that's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
It's Ian.
And Bonnie.
And we are one of the independent media organizations that companies around the world have sort of been targeting and attempting to silence for the last few years. And, it may seem a bit high-minded of me to say that about our show, but it's factually true. YouTube constantly was sending us strikes, and it was because of the opinions that we were expressing. YouTube didn't care for them. We are independent media. We're not beholden to Fox News or MSNBC or any of these others.
We had our credit card processor shut us down in, I think, September of last year.
That's also true, and a fair number of us are facing federal indictments, so that's also a factor here. But losing all of these avenues it does occasionally feel like some dark force out there is doing everything it can to shut down independent media. And if you just look beyond us and what's affecting us personally, you have Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning, who spent like 6 months in jail because she refused to testify for a grand jury or something like that. I actually
Is that how long she went back for?
I don't know. She may still be in jail. I
think she's posting on Twitter.
And
well, so is
Grimes
Ross
is dating
Ulbricht
her.
in theory.
True.
So I don't know if Chelsea Manning. That's true. She is dating someone now, so presumably she's no longer in jail.
Yeah, unless they're just like pen paling each other. But I don't know.
It could also be that too. But I tend to think she's probably not in jail anymore. But I do like the story of Chelsea Manning and how she refused to cooperate with the government, how she refused to give in. She stood by her principles and all that, because she's a really good role model for other trans people, right? Like, as far as trans people standing up to the federal government, we got a few. There's me and there's Chelsea Manning. And both of the two trans people I know who stood up to the federal government did not back down. That's a pretty good ratio to have versus all of the people out there taking plea deals and stuff like that, and who probably would have testified for the grand jury.
She spent 2 months in jail for not testifying in front of the grand jury, which is longer than most people would spend because they'll do whatever the government tells them.
And it's not like they told her, you're going to spend 2 months in jail. They just put her in there indefinitely. Then they had to let her out.
It was unspecified, and I think she was fined at some point for it. I don't know the specifics.
You can be held as long as the grand jury is meeting, and the grand jury meets for up to 18 months at a time.
Well, if you're being held in contempt, you can be held as long as they want.
Can you be held in contempt of a grand jury, though?
Specifically regarding grand juries, the rule, as I understand it, Bonnie, is you can only be held as long as the grand jury is in session.
Still, a possibility of 18 months is a long time. So anyway, I don't know how I got into that, but kudos to Chelsea Manning on that. And kudos to the independent media out there. Like, that's how I got into it. Julian Assange, who was willing to talk about things that no one else wanted him to talk about, because that's what independent media does. That's why it's so important. Now, evidently, PayPal is turning its crosshairs onto independent media. And this isn't the first time they did this. They did it to sex workers a few years ago. Then they
did it to Chris Cantwell.
They did, and, I hate to say it, but this was why I spoke out against that sort of thing then, because if you want to test out a new censorship policy, you test it out on the most unpopular group of people you can find, because no one's going to care if you silence the Nazis. If you keep them off Twitter, if you keep them off PayPal, no one's going to care. They're Nazis. Screw them. And that's why it's so important to stand up for the most disenfranchised, the most disrespected, the most widely reviled group in your society, because they're the ones that are going to get targeted first for all of the fun little censorship programs and the mass murder programs that the governments are going to try.
And they normalize it, like with the, what you guys were talking about, with the camps in China.
Yeah, they make it normal. And PayPal started with Chris Cantwell, sex workers, both of which are obvious targets for this sort of thing, right? Sex workers, not very popular. I mean, they're tremendously popular, but you wouldn't know that based on what people have to say about them publicly on social media. They don't care if, OnlyFans and Pornhub users or whatever get their monetization taken away, and they don't care if the Nazis do.
Sex workers, by the way, another group of people that probably will never be able to open a bank account if they're honest with the banks about what they do, because a lot of banks will just say no.
Riley Reid has had her Instagram taken down like 20 times.
Who's that, a sex worker?
She's a really famous porn star.
Is she posting nudes?
If she's a porn star, probably.
No.
I don't think you can on Instagram, though.
Yeah,
Instagram?
I don't think she posts
probably
like full nudes.
That's OnlyFans where you can do that, right?
Sure. So they're upset with her because of her other profession?
Yeah. Well, the banks will shut you down even if you're not using your account for sex work.
Yeah, but banks
if they
are
find
crazy.
out you're a sex worker, you're done for.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, banks are crazy, but that doesn't explain why PayPal is targeting sex workers, except that, they had a censorship apparatus in place that they wanted to try out.
Well, they want to be a bank.
Do they? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
They're not.
They probably have to work with banks too.
Of course.
They do for the time being, but the PayPal has their own debit card. They have their own ways of transferring money. They even have their own special little Bitcoin that people can buy that may or may not actually be Bitcoin. We'll never know. They're working on giving people the capability of moving it out of PayPal.
So they say.
They do say that. And I have no reason to trust PayPal. I would suggest that most people have no reason to trust PayPal. But wasn't PayPal created by Elon Musk?
I've not heard that story. It was Peter Thiel, I believe, was involved in the founding of PayPal. Maybe he was with Musk at the time. I don't know. Peter Thiel is sort of known as this sort of libertarian investor or whatever, and he sold it years ago. I'm not sure maybe Musk wasn't an early investor. Anyway, do you want to hear the story?
Yeah, absolutely. Because now I'm looking at this because he was a co-founder of PayPal, evidently.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Good for him. PayPal's original intentions were good, but it just got corrupted by the banking system.
That's often how it goes, right? Cash App originally had good intentions, and they managed to keep those through. In a lot of cases, you can buy and sell Bitcoin on Cash App, and they are trying to create...
And you can withdraw it.
Yes, and they are trying to create an actual peer-to-peer payment network, which is what PayPal allegedly was supposed to do. Actually, I guess I don't really know what PayPal's original plan was.
I think that the idea was to put people in charge of being able to send money online to one another, which was prior to PayPal something you really couldn't do in any sort of meaningful way. So they really did advance the ball as far as online payments were concerned.
Okay.
To put it in the reach of the average person. So I don't know how you pronounce this guy's name. I've seen his name over the years. Matt Taibbi, Taibbi. He's got a Substack account, which is, for those who don't know, it's a website that allows people like Glenn Greenwald, and I think Ed Snowden may have one, to kind of just blog about whatever they want, supposedly without any editorial interference from this company. So I've heard good things about Substack. Anyway, he says in this story, PayPal's indie media wipeout, a series of moves against media outlets by PayPal, shows the next step in speech control, confiscation. Why won't the company answer questions? Some of this is going to sound familiar to you, Arya. In the last week or so, the online payment platform PayPal, without explanation, suspended the accounts of a series of individual journalists and media outlets, including the well-known sites Consortium News and Mint Press. Each received.
I think I've heard of Mint Press.
I've heard of Mint Press.
I've heard of Mint Press. They did something about Free Keen.
Oh, cool.
Well, you're the one that told me that.
I don't remember. Each received a variation of the following message. You can't use PayPal anymore, with an exclamation mark inside a triangle at the top. At PayPal, we value a safer community for our customers to do business. We noticed activity in your account that's inconsistent with our user agreement, and therefore, we can no longer offer you PayPal services.
That part sounds familiar as someone who has, in fact, been banned for life from PayPal.
Any bank or credit card details that's linked to your PayPal account cannot be removed and added to another account. You can still log in and see your account information, but you can't send or receive money. Any money in your PayPal balance will be held for up to 180 days.
That's right. I forgot that. It was 180 freaking days,
months. If you are using PayPal as, let's say you're a mostly unbanked person, like me.
Yeah.
I thankfully, they haven't shut down our PayPal account at this point. Could happen any day. But if you're using PayPal for your day-to-day stuff, you're using their debit card, that's where you're holding you're getting direct deposit or whatever from your whoever it is you work for, etc. And then all of a sudden they say, you're done, but we're just going to hold your balance for 180 days. And then after that, they say, after 180 days, if applicable, we'll email you with information on how to withdraw any remaining money from your PayPal account.
Which, regrettably, for people out there, it means they will write you a check. That's the only way they'll do it. I've been through this, and I had forgotten that it was 180 days, but that did suck. And I remember making peace with it then. I'm like, look, I'm just going to wait it out. And a half a year from now, I'm going to receive a nice little happy email telling me I have some money that I had forgotten about.
Right.
So I did just sort of make myself forget about it, but I wasn't trying to run my small business or whatever. Like Conan buys and sells stuff on eBay. Maybe he gets payments through PayPal. I can imagine having a significant amount of necessary money tied up.
It's gone.
For 180 years.
But it gets worse.
Months.
It gets worse.
603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. The US's central bank has raised interest rates by 0.5 percentage point in a bid to get a handle on rising inflation. It's the first time in 22 years that the Federal Reserve has increased rates this much. Fed Chair Jerome Powell has warned that more increases are expected this year.
Inflation is much too high, and we understand the hardship it is causing, and we're moving expeditiously to bring it back down. We have both the tools we need and the resolve that it will take to restore price stability on behalf of American families and businesses. COVID-related lockdowns in China are likely to further exacerbate supply chain disruptions as well. Against the backdrop of the rapidly evolving economic environment, our policy has been adapting, and it will continue to do so. The committee is determined to take the measures necessary to restore price stability. The American economy is very strong and well-positioned to handle tighter monetary policy.
Thousands of people have protested across the United States for a woman's right to choose after a leaked Supreme Court draft showed that justices are getting ready to overturn abortion rights. Chief Justice Roberts said the leak was a betrayal and that the Supreme Court will investigate. US correspondent Caroline Malone reports.
From New York to San Francisco, Boston to Chicago, Atlanta to Houston, there were groups of protests on Tuesday night against a move to repeal abortion rights in the United States. In Seattle, people called for an escalating series of mass action, including possible national strikes if the constitutional right to abortion is removed. Late Monday, US media published a leaked Supreme Court draft document that said the nearly 50-year-old abortion rights law Roe v. Wade was damaging and should be lifted. If that happens, it will be up to individual states to decide on abortion access. Polls show nearly 60% of people in the US support abortion access in most cases, while less than 30% say the law should be overturned. Caroline Malone, Washington.
Police in Los Angeles have arrested a man who attacked comedian Dave Chappelle on stage while holding a replica handgun. The 48-year-old performer was unharmed in the incident. Ira Spitzer has more from California.
Videos from the incident show a man rushing the stage at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles and trying to tackle Dave Chappelle during his performance. Los Angeles police have identified the suspect as 23-year-old Isaiah Lee and say he was armed with a replica handgun containing a knife blade. The suspect was then beaten by security and others and taken to the hospital with apparent injuries while Chappelle continued performing. Numerous other comedians were in attendance, including Chris Rock, who jokingly asked if that was Will Smith, a reference to Smith slapping Rock on stage during this year's Academy Awards.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, continuing our look at Australia's general election. It takes place on May the 21st, and Prime Minister Scott Morrison is battling for his political life. His Liberal National Coalition is in trouble at the polls, and the Australian Labor Party, led by Anthony Albanese, is daring to dream of victory. Benedict Brooke is a senior reporter for the website news.com.au.
Labor's launched their campaign in Perth this week. And look, the opinion polls are, as far as you can take opinion polls, but they're looking pretty good on a two-party basis. They've got 53% so far.
He says Labour has overhauled its manifesto and is focusing on some major pledges, including equity for first-time home buyers, one of several big issues in Australia.
Well, they're also looking at cutting prescription costs. There's cheaper childcare. There's taking more action on electric cars. Climate change, as I've said, is seen as a bit of a blind spot for the Liberals, for the coalition. So Labour's trying to kind of do some kind of vote-winning things in that space. On the Liberal side, they're talking up their traditional areas, the economy, national security. But COVID has, ripped through economies worldwide, so that's more shaky.
And this week, the Australian Central Bank raised interest rates for the first time in more than a decade, dealing a fresh challenge to Prime Minister Morrison's re-election efforts. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. The US central banks raised interest rates by 0.5 percentage point in a bid to get a handle on inflation. Thousands of people have protested across the US for a woman's right to choose after a leaked Supreme Court draft showed justices are getting ready to overturn abortion rights. And police in Los Angeles have arrested a man who attacked comedian Dave Chappelle on stage.
In a competitive tech world, companies are always looking to the latest trend to keep their employees productive and happy at the office. But a new study suggests that employees are actually happiest when they're simply pretending to work from home. The study from tech and consulting giant IBM found employees felt overall more focused and content with their jobs when doing personal tasks like catching up on laundry or their favorite TV shows when they should be working.
I just make sure that I send some emails to my supervisor first thing in the morning so he thinks I'm up and working, but then I just go right back to bed.
I never have to deal with rush hour traffic or anything. I just walk across the room, sit down at my desk, and start browsing through my Twitter feed immediately.
The trend is making its way to the country's most influential tech companies like Google, where employees are encouraged to put in 12 empty hours of work a week from their homes. The study hasn't swayed every company, however. Yahoo CEO Marissa Mayer said in a statement, "At Yahoo, we prefer that our employees pretend to work side by side right here in our offices."
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talking about how it's inevitable. Once you begin giving people control of your money, they seem to turn into the devil. 603-283-6160 if you'd like to weigh in on this topic or any other, whatever you want to talk about. If you want to talk about what's happening in China, or if you just want to talk about NFTs like we were bashing on, they're finally dying, and I've never been well, I have frequently been happier, but I'm still very happy to hear about NFTs dying. And of course, now we're talking about PayPal and the evil things that it's planning to do now that it's so popular, it's so widespread, it has so much control over people's money. 603-283-6160, because this is the same old story we've always heard. The only example I can think of that's different would be Coinbase, who went into this game planning to be evil, planning to use the state apparatus to control people's money, planning to put themselves up as the gateway between the average person and the banking industry, as the cryptocurrency gateway to appease the government. Coinbase planned that for the start. It doesn't seem like PayPal or Cash App or any of these others set out to be that evil monolithic copy of the banking system.
Well, ultimately, it is the government's fault, like most things, because the government makes the regulations that these people keep having to abide by.
Yes, and if there was no government, then there would be no regulations that they would have to abide by, and there would be no state that they could use, that they could weaponize against competitors. I'm still amazed to this day that some startup, I mean, if Jack Dorsey hadn't had Twitter money behind him, there's no way Square and Cash App could have survived as long as they did with PayPal being their competitor. PayPal would have just cried to the government, hey, no, you can't let these people sell this Bitcoin stuff. They're money laundering over there. And the government would have cracked down on Cash App. However, Jack Dorsey did have Twitter money, so he was able to actually compete with PayPal. Unfortunately, PayPal is an evil corporation. They've always been an evil corporation. We were just talking about how their standard policy when they close your account.
I don't know if they've always been that evil. I mean, back in the day, you could just swing open a PayPal account with it felt like just an email address. And then eventually you could connect it to a bank account. And of course, then you'd have to go through a know your customer process. But I remember when it was pretty fast and loose with
That's true. I did say always evil, and they weren't always evil. Yeah. Like, I still technically have multiple PayPal accounts. I imagine if I attempted to use any of them, they would immediately be flagged and blocked. However, back in the day, yes, I have multiple because all it took was an email address.
Right.
And now because of government regulations, if you receive $600 on PayPal or any of these, you have to report it to the government for tax purposes.
Well, PayPal will do the reporting for you in that case. But yes, that's a recent development.
And I'm not terribly surprised by it. I mean, the government wants to track every bit of that's why I don't understand why the government is hostile toward cryptocurrency. If what they actually want to do is track every bit of money, well, it seems like they would want to move people away from the dollar and into things like PayPal and cryptocurrency, or Bitcoin in particular.
Well, we know why they're hostile toward Bitcoin is because they don't control it. I mean, yeah, they can see every Bitcoin transaction.
They want both.
But that's not good enough.
They want to be able to see and control it.
Right. That's a fair point.
My friend is trying to start a sewing business, and I offered to pay him in Bitcoin, and I'm going to try to really explain to him, like, isn't this better than if any time you made $600 with your sewing business, you had to, if the government reported it because someone paid you on PayPal, you should just accept Bitcoin all the time.
Now, if you're doing this as a business, remember this law has never existed at the time that I was running any businesses. But if a business existed, is this $600 of income or $600 of profit that they have to report?
I believe it's income.
That's absurd.
It's so tiny. But for any small business, that's a tiny amount of money.
Absolutely. It
just
is
like
insane. But
you're going to have to be paying them so much more money just to start a business now. These people, the government, don't want what's best for the people.
No, of course not. They want control, and they want to be able to tax everything, and they realize that, they have to take their taxes up further now that all of the COVID-19 printing happened and the inflation has kicked in, and the dollar just doesn't go as far as they need it to. And it's not going to ever go that far again, and they're just going to inflate more of it because the dollar isn't going as far, and it creates this feedback loop of hyperinflation. Eventually, it gets to the point of hyperinflation. We're not at that point now,
not
but
yet.
Their solution right now is to, we'll just widen the net onto which we're casting our taxes.
I think the CPI last month for March, or announced last month for March, was 8.5%, which was the highest it's been in 41 or so years.
Oh, the May numbers should be out soon.
It'll be the April numbers. They'll be published this month, and maybe we're going to hit double digits. Who knows?
I tend to think that my gut feeling as a consumer is that there was not much of an inflation increase from March to April as there was from February to March or whatever.
Well, the numbers are measured on a 12-month basis. So
that's right.
8.5% is from last year to this year, basically, as I understand it.
Yeah, and I don't remember what inflation was like. It felt like around this time last year, but I can't imagine it was good.
We did notice that there's cat food at Market Basket again.
A little bit.
Not that has to do with inflation.
There was no cat food. I had to buy some different cat food. Some stuff they had at the actual pet store here. I don't remember the name of the pet store, but it was some wellness brand stuff. I was like, oh, the cats are going to hate this. It's this hipster, it's healthy for your cats thing, and it's probably like 90% soy or something that's going to kill my cats. So I did not want to buy it, but it was super expensive. It came in these little tiny cans, and there were 12 of them in the box, and it cost me like almost $20-something.
Oh my God.
And that's 6 meals for these 2 cats. But luckily, I was able to find some from the place that I normally get it from, and it's still super expensive, and it wasn't what they like. It is something they will tolerate and that they will deal with. But yeah, cat food, still missing, and still don't know why. They say, well, it's because more people adopted cats during the pandemic.
That many?
I don't believe that, first of all, because that's exactly my response. I don't think that many people adopted cats.
It doesn't make sense because, I mean, whether the people adopted the cats or not, either the cats are in the Humane Society waiting for adoption or they're being adopted. I mean, eventually they might get put to death in some places, but the same amount of cats should relatively be out there.
Lots of people always had lots of cats.
Yeah, and you don't immediately go from 0 cats to 1 cat and buy them only wet food.
Mm-hmm.
Most people will only feed their cats dry food, and even the ones who use wet food will alternate between wet and dry on each day.
Whenever I had a cat, it was dry food.
Yeah, my cats were always dry food until my vet recommended against it, and I was like, oh, you know what? That's a fair point. I'm going to stop doing that. And that cats have been noticeably healthier since then, but also for the last year, it's been very difficult to find what the cats actually want to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to be fair, at Market Basket, when we noticed there was more cat food, it still would have been something like, if there was a normal amount of cat food all the time, then we saw that much, it would have looked like a little. But instead of being
barely anything.
Fair point.
Instead of being empty shelves, there were some cat foods.
It's like, hey, there's 3 boxes. I mean, under normal circumstances, it'd be like 20, but 3 is better than 0 for sure. Unfortunately, it's just one of those. I jokingly said that it was because people were buying more McDonald's and stuff like that. So the meat quality that was being used in Big Macs or whatever is probably about the same that's being used in my cat food. But
I think you're onto something seriously. Like, I really believe that.
The amount of people eating, I think there's probably something to be said for that, because they just take all those bones, all that meat, and they crush it up into this disgusting amalgam of meats and meat products and bones and tissues and stuff, and then they turn it into a burger-shaped thing and they serve it to people, or they turn it into cat food.
I was telling Ian, and he didn't know that at White Castle they take onions and beef and put it into like a blender, and then they make the square patties, which is really weird.
I didn't know
and
that
gross.
either, but yeah, this sounds about right. And in a lot of these places, it's probably not 100% beef. I remember when I was growing up, my dad mentioning Taco Bell. It's like, there's no way they're actually putting ground beef in there at the prices that they're.
I always heard
it's anchovies.
I always heard that Taco Bell was like the grade Z beef.
It has to be, man.
No, it's seriously anchovies.
Anchovies is fish.
Yeah, they have anchovies as filler in their ground beef.
Really?
I wouldn't be terribly surprised. It seems like anchovies would be more expensive than the cardboard or whatever it is they're using.
I think I'm right. I mean, I think that's a fact. I'm pretty sure that's true.
I don't know, but I mean, that's generally what gets put into your Big Mac and your Chicken McNuggets and stuff as well. The difference is, I think a fair bit of that used to go into cat food, but people eating fast food is also on the decline, as I understand it. So I don't know what's going on with cat food. It's frustrating. Economic hard times are ahead. Luckily, my cats are not in any danger of starving. When this COVID-19 crap started, I went out and I bought like 6 big 50-pound bags of cat food. So one way or another, they will have something to eat.
They'll get over it and eat their
Yeah, they just
food
may
they
not
don't
be
like.
happy about it. 603-283-6160. There's more coming up about the evils of PayPal. It's Free Talk Live.
So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you know the difference between erudite and pedantic? If you do, you're probably pedantic. But seriously, a surprising number of erudite people mispronounce erudite, which has 3 syllables, not 4. Say erudite, not erudite. Because you are judged by how you speak, you want to avoid common misstatements, especially if you're a job seeker. For instance, do you know the difference between imply and infer? Only a speaker can imply. Only a listener can infer. And when you say you'll be out of pocket, do you mean out of touch? Out of pocket means you're on your own dime, not yet reimbursed. And if anyone ever asks, why do you always answer a question with a question? You should reply, do I do that? Just kidding. From survivalspeech.com, I'm Holland Cook.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where, as always, we invite you to take control of the airwaves to talk about whatever is on your mind. 603-283-6160 if you would like to weigh in. That's 603-283-6160. Maybe you worked at a Taco Bell, and you can help us solve the mystery of the meat.
Well,
what is it? Is it cardboard? My gut tells me it's cardboard.
I don't see anything about anchovies, so I don't know where that one came from.
We didn't find
Bonnie.
anchovies online, but I'm not taking it back because anchovies is a figure of speech.
Well, isn't anchovies a fancy salty fish or
I don't know
something
if it's
like
fancy, but it's a pizza topping that weird people use.
It's fish, though, right? Isn't
it is fish.
Okay.
They're tiny fish. People eat
It's
them whole.
salty, right? Like salty from being canned.
It sounds gross to me, and I do know they're slimy because I worked at a Pizza Hut a very, very long time ago, and they did have anchovies. They were the only pizza place I'd ever heard of that had anchovies.
Really?
They were the most disgusting things I've ever touched in my life. They came in this little sardine-like can, and you peeled it back, and they were slimy, and I don't know.
Can't imagine
really
having that
gross.
on a pizza, right?
Well, I know for a fact, that they're in the sauce at freaking forgot what it's called.
You said White Castle earlier. Is that what you were thinking?
No. Oh, Raising Cane's. That's a chicken place, and they have this really good sauce. And I only know that for a fact because somebody that I knew somebody that was vegan, so they wanted to order something from this place that wasn't chicken, and they're like, I'm just gonna get fries and the sauce, and they're like, because I'm vegan, they had to disclose to them that there was anchovies in it.
Gross.
But it's a good sauce. It's really
I
good.
didn't even know this. Anchovy is actually the name of the fish. I should have presumed that, right? I didn't. There's actually a fish called the anchovy.
I only know that because of SpongeBob.
I would assume that. I know they're disgusting. I would not want to eat one, but
They're kind of like minnows.
I'm leaning toward cardboard for Taco Bell because when I think about, the consistency of the quote ground beef in Taco Bell, I'm like this, if you got cardboard like soaking wet, it would have about the same texture and the same consistency as the Taco Bell ground beef.
Well, they have to do that. It comes like a powder. They have to add water to it and it hydrates it. It's not like something that comes frozen. It comes as a powder.
Yeah, you know that from someone who worked there?
No, I've seen videos of this. This isn't.
It's probably on TikTok, isn't it?
I don't know.
I mean, they are generally reliable when they circulate the internet like that. It sounds disgusting. I don't know that I want to eat meat that has to be rehydrated. Luckily, we don't even have a Taco Bell here in Keene. We did.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, it's at
half the KFC.
KFC.
I thought they closed.
I have no idea. I've never been there.
No, I've not heard that they closed.
I thought
think
they
were
closed years
temporarily.
ago. Okay.
I think they were closed temporarily during the COVID situation due to staffing issues.
Well, they can't be doing well. I didn't even know there was one. But I mean, they're right there in the same strip as Chipotle, and I'm not a big fan of Chipotle either. If I'm going to eat, some cheap Mexican, it's going to be Chipotle.
Chipotle went
Bell.
cashless.
Are they
COVID.
still cashless?
As I understand it.
And you have to
That's what I
order
heard.
ahead of time. Well, that annoyed me so bad that I was like, I'm never going back to Chipotle if they're going to do that.
So Taco Bell admits that their meat is 88% beef. So that much they're upfront about.
A higher ratio than I would have expected.
And of course, the other 12% is made up of a lot of stuff like, soybean oil. I don't think they actually have soy as a straight soy ingredient, but they do have soybean oil and soy lecithin, as well as apparently cornstarch and torula yeast and a bunch of other stuff.
Cocoa powder.
But not seeing any anchovies on the list.
Caramel color.
That sounds about right. I would expect about the same ingredients for McDonald's ground beef or Burger King ground beef. It's not going to be 100% ground beef. It's going to have some sort of soybean oil in it. Probably some other garbage that I don't want to eat.
Interestingly, though, they over at Slate.com, which is obviously a pretty heavy leftist opinion site, they have an article also at around the same time that Taco Bell really revealed this information, and they say that most fast food meat is very low quality. One study of fast food hamburgers found they contained connective tissue, blood vessels, peripheral nerves, adipose tissue, cartilage, and bone, as you were saying earlier, Arya, along with muscle tissue. To mask the flavor of...
So this is where the cat food went.
Yep.
Because that's what's in cat food.
To mask the flavor of peripheral nerves, fast food meat
Why does it have its own flavor?
Fast food meat is heavily seasoned, as Taco Bell's seasoned beef exemplifies.
Without the seasoning, is somebody going to eat that and be like, this tastes like peripheral nerve?
Taco Bell's explainer website insists that they use, quote, only USDA-inspected 100% premium real beef, period, unquote. But that's a meaningless phrase. All meat sold in the U.S. is USDA-inspected, and premium doesn't have an official meaning as a meat label.
Hold on.
When
they say all meat sold in the United States is USDA grade or whatever the phrase was, does that include the meat in cat food?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Because that's technically meat.
It is.
I'm not sure. I mean, I wouldn't eat it. I doubt that it's... What would happen if... I spent enough time thinking about pulmonary veins and whatever it is that people are eating in their McDonald's.
Right.
We have Jordan on the line. Jordan, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hello. I live in New Hampshire, and I see a few Ukrainian flags, and I was just going to ask you three, or really anyone, has anyone considered about, with all the funding and military going to Ukraine, that what would happen if alliances shifted in the other direction with Ukraine, for whatever reason, in the next coming years, were to shift towards Russia with everything that's going on?
Yeah, I mentioned this last night on the show, actually. I think it's the point that people need to realize it's not only likely, it's inevitable. The same thing happened in Afghanistan, where the United States sided with the Afghans against the Soviet Union. They supplied them with arms, they trained them, and Osama bin Laden was one of the people that the United States military trained back in the 80s to fight against the Soviet Russians. And just a few decades later, not even 2 entire decades later, the United States government was fighting those very same people.
And then left a ton of weapons and helicopters and things like that behind.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, it seems pretty obvious, right, Jordan? The U.S. Proxy war fails and Putin takes over Ukraine. Then he gets the spoils of war, which include whatever weapons the NATO and the U.S. sent in there.
It was probably done on purpose, just a way for them to go in and, start a new war.
It does look like the U.S. government spent, 20 years and countless trillions of dollars to arm the Afghan insurgents, to arm the Taliban. Like, there had to have been easier ways to arm the Taliban, but I'm not sure there were, not with the outrage against the Taliban and all of that stuff. But that seems to be the net result of the war in Afghanistan, was the arming of the Taliban. And I suspect that's going to be the net result in Ukraine as well, Jordan.
Yeah, I would think maybe this would be a topic of discussion for those in favor of secession.
In favor of secession in the United States?
Like if New Hampshire is seceding and becoming its own sovereign nation or whatever, would this be a good open topic for discussion?
I certainly think so, because it's obviously not New Hampshire that is sending arms to Ukraine and that is going to have to deal with the blowback once some dictator gets into power in Ukraine that's friendlier with Russia than they are to the United States. And that's one of the issues that we have with Zelensky and the situation in Russia. Sure, Zelensky, it seems, was put there by the CIA. He was put in power. He won't be in power forever. They're very likely to get someone in power who is pro-Russia. And suddenly all of those arms, all of that stuff is, biting the United States government. When really the New Hampshire government, they didn't do that. They paid taxes to the United States government, but that's under duress. It's not the average person of New Hampshire doing that. It's the U.S. government. It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. U.S. stocks jumped sharply on Wednesday after the Federal Reserve raised interest rates by a widely anticipated 0.5 percentage point, and Fed Chairman Jerome Powell ruled out getting even more aggressive in the central bank's inflation-fighting campaign. FSN's U.S. correspondent Kate Fisher reports.
On Wall Street, the Dow Jones and S&P 500 had their biggest gain since 2020, both rising nearly 3%, and the Nasdaq jumped 3.2%, after the central bank announced that it was hiking its benchmark interest rate 0.5 percentage points. That's the Federal Reserve's biggest increase in 22 years. Chair Jerome Powell said the move would help to curb inflation.
Inflation is much too high, and we understand the hardship it is causing, and we're moving expeditiously to bring it back down. We have both the tools we need and the resolve that it will take to restore price stability on behalf of American families and businesses.
With US inflation at a 40-year high, further hikes are expected. But the spike in living costs is being felt around the world. India's central bank also announced a surprise increase to its benchmark rate on Wednesday, the first time in 2 years.
The European Union says it is planning a full embargo on Russian oil imports as part of a fresh package of sanctions to be imposed on Moscow over the war in Ukraine. The package is dependent on approval from all 27 EU member states. U.S. President Joe Biden says Washington is also considering additional sanctions on Russia and plans to discuss potential measures with other G7 leaders this week. With more, here's FSN's U.S. correspondent Simon Marks.
It's not just the damage to the economy that the sanctions are doing. It is also the fact that the United States continues to offer the Ukrainians significant weaponry that they can use to beat back the Russian assault. President Biden has made a fresh request of Congress, $33 billion in assistance, some of it for weaponry, some of it for humanitarian assistance. And that, they argue here, is a further indication that the United States is digging in for the long haul in this battle. over the Russian assault on Ukraine.
In other news, thousands of people have protested across the United States for a woman's right to choose after a leaked Supreme Court draft showed justices are getting ready to overturn abortion rights. And Volkswagen has announced that customers wanting to purchase an electric vehicle from the automaker could face increased delays because of the war in Ukraine. The German automaker said globally it had sold 100,000 electric vehicles in the first 3 months of this year, but in Western Europe alone, the company still had a backlog of over 300,000 orders. From Bureaus Worldwide, this.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160 if you would like to weigh in, share your thoughts and opinions about the cat food that people are eating at Burger King and McDonald's when they go out, and Taco Bell and all of these other fast food places. I thought it was suspicious that people began eating more fast food and the cat food began disappearing. But now, having heard the ingredients of what is actually going into fast food, I'm sitting here going, yeah, that's the back of my cat's food label is what you're reading out right there. So yeah, all the meat and the meat byproducts and the veins and the emulsified cartilage or whatever. That's
crushed bone, apparently.
Yeah, that's what they put in wet cat food, right? And that's also what they put in fast food. So there's a cat food shortage. I don't know what else to say when people are eating more. Will you people out there stop eating my cat food? But before we got into that, we were talking about PayPal. And when I say my cat food, I mean the food that is for my cats, not for me. I'm not going to go home tonight and eat a can of cat food. It's not that bad here in New Hampshire yet because we are advocates of cryptocurrency and gold and stuff like that. So even when it does get that bad, when you're looking at your cat's food, being like, man, that's going to... I, on the other hand, have two great, big, fat, juicy cats I can eat. That's just... It was a bad joke. It didn't land, clearly. I would never eat my cats.
I didn't think you would.
And Conan pointed out that eating your pets isn't enough meat and nutrition to mask the... Like, they'll help you not be depressed. They'll help you wake up if you don't have an alarm clock anymore because the internet's gone or whatever.
There's all sorts of reasons. I mean, they're my friends, and I wouldn't eat my friends. But it's a funny joke. Well, I think it's funny. I like telling it to people, when they're sitting there, they're worrying about eating cat food or whatever, adding water to their dry cat food so they don't starve to death. I'm like, yeah, sucks for you. I got two cats I can eat. It's horrible, but it's my kind of dark humor. But anyway,
Conan really is going to eat his rabbits, though.
He is going to, and I saw videos of them today, and they're so cute.
So cute. Oh.
I don't know if he's going to eat these or because he's also got some that he was breeding to sell or something like that. So
he said he has meat rabbits and something else rabbits.
He's got pet rabbits. So I'm hoping that he was not so callous to be like, hey, look at these meat rabbits. Aren't they adorable? But it's Conan,
next video is him gutting them.
This is nature, people. Stop eating these seeds and crickets.
Well, you should definitely stop eating my cat's food. Yeah, I would appreciate that if people would comply. But before we got into that, we were talking about PayPal and how they're targeting independent media.
Again,
yes. Now, initially, they started out with people like Chris Cantwell as sex workers, the most unpopular people, and now they're spreading it to, I can't remember the name of the...
Consortium News, which I had not heard of, and Mint Press, which I have.
Mint Press I have heard of, but they were really obscure. It's not like they were one of the most popular sites, but they were one that I know for a fact in the past I have clicked on and used.
And Ian, I remember what they covered that you were talking about, that you told me about. You said that they covered the pumpkin riots in Keaton.
Oh, cool. So PayPal sent out notices saying here that 180 days they're going to hold on to the balance of these accounts that are now locked down. They're saying you could still log into the account and see what the balance is, but that's all you can do.
That's a true statement.
Yeah. Unlike many of the people on the list, consortium editor Joe Loria succeeded in actually reaching a human being at the company.
That's amazing.
In search of details about the frozen or held funds referenced in the note. The PayPal rep told him that if the company decided, quote, there was a violation, unquote, after their half-year-long review period, then it's possible, they said, that PayPal would keep the $9,348.14 remaining remaining in consortium's account as, quote, damages, unquote.
And what they mean by that is that if some little kid used their parents' credit card to send money through PayPal, or they used their parents' account, or any of these sorts of scenarios, or just where someone was scammed into sending money to this person's PayPal account, in theory, they would just deduct that money and return the rest of it to the guy, but they don't have to, and their terms of service don't require them to, as I understand it.
Loria says, quote, a secretive process in which they could award themselves damages, not by a judge or a jury, totally in secret, unquote. Consortium was founded by a late investigative reporter, Robert Perry, an of NATO and the Pentagon, and a consistent source of skeptical reporting about Russiagate, as well as one of just a few outlets regularly covering the Julian Assange case with any sympathy for the accused.
Okay, so free speech advocate, right?
Sounds like it.
Hopefully this person at the consortium, they are also accepting cryptocurrency, hopefully.
I hope so. Ironically, if not, they ought to really look into it. Ironically, one of the site's primary themes involves exploring disinformation emanating from the intelligence community. The site has had content disrupted by platforms like Facebook before, but now its pockets are being picked in addition. The episode ups the ante again on the content moderation movement toward the world hinted at in response to the Canadian trucker protests, where having the wrong opinions can result in your money being frozen or seized.
Which was also a good advertisement for cryptocurrency.
Absolutely. Going after cash is a big jump from simply deleting speech, with a much bigger chilling effect. This is especially true in the alternative media world, where money has long been notoriously tight, and the loss of a few $1,000s here or there can have a major effect on a website, podcast, or paper.
That's a really good point. Fox News isn't going to be hurt if they miss $9,000 or whatever it was. But the smaller place, their size, that's people not being able to pay their families.
As Mint Press founder
feed their families,
and executive director Manar Adley points out, the current era of content moderation, characterized by private platforms either overtly or covertly working with government to identify accounts to censure, really began with PayPal's historic decision in 2010 to halt donations to WikiLeaks. In that case, PayPal acted after receiving a letter from the State Department claiming the site's activities were illegal. Quote, PayPal banning donations from WikiLeaks really set up the blueprint for today's censorship. That's a strong argument there.
And it's a true one.
Loria believes PayPal is basing a potential claim on his company's funds on a list of restricted activities in its service agreement that includes providing, quote, false, inaccurate, or misleading information. Well, there it is right there. That's the loophole that you can just drive a Mack truck right on through. Whatever it is the government says is misleading, as we've learned during the COVID years, is all they need to have the excuse to freeze your account now.
Even if something comes out that proves that it was true the whole time.
Later on.
Like the Hunter Biden laptop stuff.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to go back to PayPal and say, see, we were telling the truth. They're not going to care.
Well, it's even worse in reality because Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, they've never been caught in a lie.
Mm-hmm.
They've never been caught in misinformation. Everything that no one has ever even bothered to deny stuff that WikiLeaks has leaked.
Nope, they just want to put him in prison.
So it's not even misinformation. It's just information that the powers that be don't want us to have. And that's far scarier.
National security.
I think it's bad if they want to prevent people from saying things that aren't true, right? That's bad. You should be able to say something that isn't true, I think.
You should be able to say things that are not true.
However, when you go beyond that, it's like, no, I don't want you to be able to say things that I don't want other people to know. That's a different level of evil.
Well, Arya, because national security.
Well, if your national security requires deceit and shadows and lies and hidden information, then it shouldn't be secure.
Alan McLeod of Mint Press is one of the writers who received the notice about improper, quote, activity, unquote, in his account. He assumed at first there had to be a mistake. He said, the claim that my activity is inconsistent with their user agreement is complete nonsense because I literally haven't even used my PayPal account since at least August of 2021. He says, I actually assumed the suspension was because it had been inactive for too long. But yet all of a sudden recently, they closed him out. His most recent article, however, is entitled, quote, The NATO to TikTok Pipeline, Why is TikTok Employing So Many National Security Agents? In it,
That's a fair question.
Isn't it interesting that national security just means the security of the nation, which is
exactly what it
the
means.
country, which is the government,
The state.
not you?
Correct. In the same way that public health actually means the health of the state.
Yeah, but to the average person, they buy into the mythology. To them, national security means they get to sleep safely at night, knowing that the terror alert is only level yellow or orange or whatever crazy scheme they've devised. It's sad. We knew this was coming, and this is why we spoke out against it when they shut down Chris Cantwell. And of course, back then, no one cared because he's Chris Cantwell. He's just a Nazi. What does it matter? It always matters. It was always leading to this, and it's always going to get worse. 603-283-6160. When we get back, we're going to talk about something more closer to home here in New Hampshire. Governor Sununu and detention centers. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
Pushing women to the ground with a camera in her hand, I think a real man wouldn't do that. And you got to be on roids or something to get into that state of mind.
Well, Wayne hit it on the head. If they're not on steroids, and a number of them, some of them are, most of them probably aren't. They're not on steroids, maybe, but they're definitely high on adrenaline. Former drug task force officer, when he started with the police, he would get that adrenaline rush from writing a ticket. And then, of course, he acclimated himself to it, and then he needed something else. He needed to escalate. He needed to have something else. So it got so extreme that he would leave people uncuffed. Like he'd bust a coke dealer or something like that, and then just leave them uncuffed on the hopes that they would get up and try to run.
So he could kick some butt. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
There are basically 2 types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. And if you value the show, if you like the ideas of liberty being out there on national radio, if you want to help us reach a larger audience, the best way to do that is with the AMPS program. You can find it at amps.freetalklive.com. That's amps.freetalklive.com. Andrew Loy is tonight's amplifier. He's a civil level amplifier, which means that Andrew is giving $5 per month to the AMPS program. And that's all it takes to get in. $5 per month. It gets you a number of cool little features like an app-only podcast, an app-only version of the podcast that you can find there on Patreon. I think there's an app-only Facebook group and an app-only chat room on the Matrix server. So check it out, amps.freetalklive.com. If you like this show, if you want to help show your support, advertise, market, promote, and support is what it stands for. So that's amps.freetalklive.com. Now, Bonnie, I hadn't heard anything about this because if I'm paying attention to local New Hampshire news, it's going to be something related to cryptocurrency and federal charges and stuff like that. Otherwise, whatever New Hampshire is doing, it's probably not as urgent to me as other things. However, then I hear words like detention center, and I'm like, oh, what have I not been paying attention to? Because it sounds like I need to go back to paying attention to New Hampshire news.
Yeah, if you haven't heard about the main reason this is in the news, it's in the news because there's a place called Sununu, the Sununu Detention Center for youth in Youth Detention Center.
Please tell me this is named after Chris Sununu. That's the cover.
No, it's named after one of his grandparents or something because they're like a
family goes way back.
I don't know if it's his grandparents or his dad, but it's actually not him, the governor, but it's kind of unfortunate for him.
I wouldn't want my name on a detention center.
Especially not if they're
raping
kids since the 1960s. Yeah, that's why it's in the news, because they got raped. And I didn't even know that it was more than, I hate to say, like more than just sexual abuse, because that's horrible already. But they were also doing things like making kids fight for their food.
Oh my God.
Locking them in.
That sort of thing wouldn't happen in New Hampshire without the state.
Yep. I mean, it wouldn't happen at such a mass scale. Maybe some people, some psychopath once in a few decades would lock their own kid in a closet or something and, eventually
Once
find out.
Once you liberate the kids from the psychopath and put them in the hands of somebody who's actually going to take care of them, the problem is solved. Whereas if the state is molesting children or torturing them or whatever, then it's this whole political process of trying to change the system from the inside, and how do we investigate this, and who do we blame? And it's just it's going to take years to change anything about that system.
And that's ultimately what this story is all about, that somebody sent me today. I thought it was important to cover it because this is about the government not wanting to take full responsibility for the fact that this happened under their watch.
Sure, well, why should they?
It's really horrible.
Well, I am going to begin tweeting at Governor Sununu tonight about his little rape center.
Yep.
And hopefully, that won't do anything, but I enjoy trolling him on Twitter and saying, hey man, how's that rape center of yours doing? Seems like a pretty good way of, trolling him. So tell me what's going on here, because I have not heard anything about it.
This broke a year ago.
Well, this story is from 7 hours ago.
Okay.
InDepthNewHampshire.org. Lawyers criticize state's abuse settlement proposal.
I didn't realize this may be longer. Did you want to save this for another night?
Well, I think we can get the basics down.
Yeah,
usually the basics are in the beginning of any story.
Okay.
Says lawyers for the victims in the Sununu Youth Detention Center abuse lawsuit says the state's proposed settlement agreement is a trap, which also sounds familiar.
Okay, so the investigation has been ongoing in other states like, hey, we'll offer you a settlement, but it probably includes something like you can't sue us or you can't appeal it, that sort of nonsense.
It says the legislator is considering a bill, which I thought was so weird. They're not taking it to court. They want to not have to take it to court.
Right.
So they want to...
I can't say I blame them.
They want to just put out this bill. It says, considering a bill that would offer a $100 million settling to the victims who claim they were tortured and abused as children while being held at the Sununu Youth Detention Center.
Wow. How many? Do you know how many people are
I think it goes
in this
on.
Lawsuit?
I think it says that here, but it says on Wednesday, lawyers David Viciano and Russ Riley issued a statement calling the settlement proposal political theater. Quote, the Senate is poised to vote on a bill, HB 1677, that supposedly atones for the state's unfathomable sins. If it passes, it will do so even though Senate President Morse and Attorney General Formella refused to meet with a single victim, who Senator Morse refers to as these people. It therefore is unsurprising that HB 1677 is a stark departure from the mainstream victim-friendly settlement processes we have seen work successfully for victims of church, state, and school abuse across the country in recent years. This bill is a political move to fool the public into thinking the current political leadership actually cares about the children the state abused. It says there are more than 300 men and women who say they were physically or sexually abused as children by 150 staffers from 1960 to 2018, which is a perfect example of the system is worse than the thing you're trying to use the system to fix. 150 people from 1960 to 2018 were sexually and physically abusing kids. It says the abuse includes gang rapes, being forced to fight each other for food, and being locked in solitary confinement for weeks or months.
And there was 300 alleged victims in the suit?
Yes.
And none of the 150 perpetrators of this tragedy are going to serve any time, are they?
Probably not. And I think that's what they're also trying to get around. They don't want to take it to court.
They want to settle.
They just want to give them money.
These are criminal acts.
Sure, but
it is against the law to rape children, even if you're an overseer at a county detention center or a state detention center.
It actually says the state has so far charged several former employees for their roles in the alleged abuse.
Several out of 150.
Yep, exactly. While at the same time, the state is pursuing a settlement agreement. Viciano, which is one of the people that is from the Senate who wants this settlement agreement to go through, said Wednesday the settlement agreement being proposed minimized the level of abuse the victims... Oh, wait, no, Viciano is one of the people speaking out against it. Sorry. He said Wednesday the settlement agreement being proposed minimized the level of abuse victims suffered and locks the victims into capped settlements based on the state's own definition of the abuse. In no other situation does the criminal get to be the judge and jury of its own case and decide the sentence, he said.
It's a fair point, but I mean, it is the state, and the state is always judge, jury, and executioner. I'm sorry that this was done to this person, but the state is ultimately always judge, jury, and executioner. That is not particularly new, but it is terrible what was done to these people, and obviously there's nothing that the state of New Hampshire can do to make any of this better, but a fat paycheck will help. And
the proposal here, I'm looking at the proposed bill, HB 1677, it does say that for claims involving sexual and physical abuse or sexual abuse only, no individual claimant shall be paid more than $1.5 million in settlement of all claims. For all claims involving physical abuse only, no individual claimant shall be paid more than $150,000 in settlement of all physical abuse claims in the aggregate. And then that's just one excerpt here. So I presume what they're trying to do here, Bonnie, is the state attorneys are trying to negotiate with the attorneys of the however many people that of the 300 victims. They said 300, I guess, in the case. So of the 300 victims, they're trying to say, hey, look, we're putting this thing together. We're trying to do what's right here, okay? So can you just accept this deal?
They're not trying very hard.
Can you just accept this deal, and then we can just put an end to this. We won't have to fight in court for years. The thing is, if they go to court, they could get much bigger payouts, and that's the idea here.
That's what the lawyer says. Formella said the proposed agreement would allow the victims to avoid a potentially traumatic lawsuit, but that victims are able to pursue greater rewards through traditional lawsuits.
The victims are traumatized at this point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Demanding justice isn't going to trauma. What traumatized them was getting raped and being thrown into solitary confinement for months or weeks, and then having to fight for their food. That's what traumatized them. And the New Hampshire taxpayer is going to be the fool who ends up paying for this nonsense.
Also, some of the victims are being excluded in this bill. I'm not sure by what metric, but it says Amanda Grady Sexton, Director of Public Affairs for the New Hampshire Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, said her organization cannot support the bill as is, as it excludes too many victims.
Not a surprise.
No, and I hope this works out for the victims. Of course, I don't see any way that it could. I mean, ultimately, they are going to have to come to peace with what happened to them and forgive the transgressors who did it. However, that doesn't mean it wouldn't go a long way for these people to get a nice fat payout from this. And that's the least that these people who committed these acts could do, I would argue. However, it's not. You said dozens of these perpetrators were facing criminal charges or had faced criminal charges. That's several out of hundreds going back. I think it was 58 years. I don't remember now. I did the math off the top of my head, and I don't remember now what it was. But even then, it's going to be the New Hampshire taxpayer who has to pay these $1 million settlements. Not even the people who actually did anything wrong. Most of them are going about just fine.
And the proposed process involves filing a claim, and then an administrator decides, not a jury. And they can decide you don't get anything.
We're out of time for tonight, but you can join us in the meantime on our social media server at social.freetalklive.com.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began.